Opening the public negotiation session. Thank y'all for being here. It's August 24th, 2022. Each team is here and we have signed the sign-in sheets for the team. Look at those. Each have one.
Accurate. Here's yours.
And I think to start off, we'll talk about the plan, what the negotiation sessions and caucuses are going to look like for today. As you know, we have been working diligently to work on the economic proposals and the economics behind them, meaning crunching numbers. And so we're still working on that as our departments had the budget presentations and the budget to prepare. So we're working on those. And we should have all those costs costed out and in the financials to share at the next meeting is what my goal is. And I think I anticipate in discussing with my team that we will be able to accomplish that. The other thing is that we have had we need some more time on some of the economic part, on some proposals that we have that we're working on, placing on the table to make changes. And we have received, as I understand, an arbitration award that raises some issues that I think both sides need to look at, and it may affect some of the articles in the collective bargaining agreement that we had not previously looked at. So there may be a need for both parties to look at it and maybe propose changes. I know that the award, I've only skimmed it. I have not studied or analyzed it yet, but the award did mention that there was some issues that should be discussed at the collective bargaining table. And I think that we should take the opportunity to do that. If there's any ambiguities or misunderstandings, that we clarify what the intent is and that we come up with some clear language that way both parties are on the same page with what it is we intend to accomplish. That being said, the city anticipates this, without looking at the arbitration award, the city had already anticipated presenting some changes to Article 16, Article 26, Article 32 and Article 37. And I think we mentioned that last time and we're working on that. We will have a couple of those proposals today. We're also looking at the ones that I have marked are Article 16, which is education benefits, certificate pay and assignment pay. 26, political activities. 32, maintenance of standards. 37, grievance procedure. And the article that I show that the association said they were going to present changes on, of course, this is before we got the arbitration award and other items that we need to look at now. It was Article 6, the rights of management. I just want to make sure I'm correct. And then at the last meeting, you previously indicated there were going to be changes to Article 16 and 29. And then at the last meeting on July 28th, you indicated that the union will not be proposing any changes to 16 and 29. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. So then the city also intends to review Article 29 and look through it and review whether there's any changes that need to be done there. Specifically, I know there's a lot of dates that are incorporated in that, so that may need to be updated. And we also need to look at the health and life insurance provision and see if there's any other issues that need to be addressed at the table. So we will be proposing that. So our list of proposals will be 16, 26, the addition of 29, Ralph? Yeah, and then
Well, if
also
I
to
may,
include
I
32
think
and 37.
the reason 29 was on the table was because of the changes of the dates. I think that was the only thing that was going to
Okay, I think that, we were anticipating getting something from you so that we can then propose, but now we have to put a proposal on, since
Okay.
you're indicating no changes, so we need to look, I need to meet with the HR and look at the financials and make sure that there may be issues that we need to address, or figure out how to fix. So we're adding 29 to that list. And then I also had from the union that you would be proposing a change to the arbitration procedure, Article 38, is that correct?
I believe that will be. Is it 59?
We had offered a proposal
We already had an operating proposal on that one.
with the understanding that if agreed to, we would go through the article and identify where we would need to change the name to the arbitrator throughout the whole article.
Yes,
Okay,
so that one we did propose.
I don't have a paper copy, I guess, was that maybe emailed to me? Okay, so we'll reconcile that, so. Article 38. Let me look at my.
Oh, that's right. FNCS,
On 38?
yeah.
Okay, hold on, let me look.
Yes, right, it turned into the proposal. Yeah.
Okay, we'll look through that, and that's one thing that we'll reconcile today, to make sure that, if you put it on the table, that we have the correct data was placed on the table, and make sure that we have the correct one, because I didn't find it, I may have it organized on a different date. Let me look real quick.
You were adding the federal mediation of
Yes,
conciliation service.
yeah, I'm
Okay.
pretty sure. Yeah, I remember we had talked about, if agreed to, we would have to go through the article, correct all
Oh,
the
here it is.
references.
Oh, no, 31,
38.
38.
38, let's see.
I was planning to put it in the,
Oh, that one's on July 14th.
Yeah, that was the last one we used.
38, here we go, okay,
You got it?
yes. That's why I'm going over to make sure that I'm. Okay, and we're gonna, I'll work on, that one we may be able to give a counter proposal today. Yeah, 38. Okay, so based on, we do have some proposals and counter proposals that we're working on finalizing to present today after a caucus. But there are going to, because of the arbitration procedure, or the arbitration award rather, as I discussed, and some economic items that we're still working with, specifically on Article 16 is the only economic article still left that we're gonna make a proposal on, but we're working through that. Our ground rules had indicated under Section 5, the schedule of presentation for proposals, letter C, the party's goal is at the fourth bargaining meeting, beginning from the first bargaining meeting, shall be the last meeting any new initial proposals may be submitted in writing and presented by either negotiation team, subject to any mutually agreed modification of the schedule. And what the city is asking is because of the need for further economic number crunching and evaluation and putting together our proposal, because they're very important proposals. We want to make sure that we get everything right. And seeing as how we got the new arbitration award I just received it yesterday afternoon. I believe, was it issued this week?
Yes.
It was day before yesterday, if I'm not
Okay,
mistaken.
so it was issued this week, and I think that both parties, I know that the city side would like to evaluate it and look at the award and propose any changes that need to be addressed pursuant to that award. If there's any, there were several articles that were addressed in that. And if there's any ambiguity or we need to fix something, or just discuss, I think that we need to at least have an additional day to make those proposals. So the city's asking that we at least have an additional session to propose the actual specific proposals we will have. I already indicated which articles that we're going to be placing on the table. I'd still need to finalize the concepts, otherwise I would discuss them today, but they're not prepared because there's information that we need to finish obtaining and finalizing and obtain authority for. So that is the city's request, and I know that you can take that back to caucus and discuss with your team. Of course, as we discuss, as we're requesting that, it would apply to both parties. It's not just for us. It would be, both sides would still have the ability to place a new proposal on the table as necessary.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and, when we caucus, we'll go ahead and talk it over. We kind of had an idea that something like this might happen. Would we be able to get a list of specifically which ones, or would this just be an all-encompassing still? Anything can be put on the table for one more meeting?
So, yeah, so I've identified the ones that I know that we had already indicated that we were gonna make a proposal for. I don't know, because I myself just received the arbitration award sometime late yesterday afternoon. I don't know if there may be another article that may be implicated. I need to meet with my team and the city staff and management. So I can't necessarily identify it, but it's not gonna be we've already TA'd the stuff that has no changes. I looked through it and I don't believe that anything that has been TA'd would be,
They do your definitions.
definitions haven't been TA'd.
Definitions
have
is,
been.
we understand it's gonna be towards the very end in case any other language that comes through,
But the
conflicts with
ones,
it, or it needs to be added to it.
Right,
That's
but-
understandable.
for instance, I know that the union was gonna propose something for rights of management, and if you're still waiting to propose something, that I think that's something that may have been discussed in the arbitration award. If you're gonna submit a proposal, then we'll counter respond to that. And so that's one of the ones that I think would be indicated. I'm looking to see which ones are kind of left. Again, the health and life insurance, that doesn't have anything to do with the arbitration award, but that has an economic aspect to it that we're working on.
Who's that financial guarantee? You should be able to get that out in no time.
He's doing it on his phone already. Let's see. Oh, and let's see, that one, the arbitration procedure, I think we need to include a timeline for the issuance of the award, number one.
I'm all in favor of that one.
So, but we've already identified that you have something on the table, so that will be part of our
Yes.
counter proposal. And I need to look, if I can identify, I will, but it's not, my intention is not to limit your side from being able to put any initial proposals.
No, and right, I guess just, our attempt is to keep the momentum going of the negotiations, where it's not just gonna be a bunch of new articles that are gonna be proposed. It's pertaining to, when we understand that the city side on the numbers issue, so we're willing to work with that.
Oh, absolutely.
So like I'm saying, I just don't wanna be hit with just a bunch of different articles that are
No.
unexpected.
No, and when I'm looking at it, and I'll go through the tentative agreements don't seem to be impacted by the arbitration whatsoever, or the economic issues that we're describing. It's be Article 1 preamble, Article 2 intent and purpose. I think that the Article 5 non-discrimination, that's T8, I don't believe that that's impacted. 9, time off to vote. That's a TA. 13, residency requirement, 14, probationary period. That should not be impacted. 19, longevity pay. That one's been TA'd and we don't intend to open that one up. 21, holidays. That one's TA'd. 24, court leave. That one's TA'd. 28, payroll deduction of dues. That one's tentatively agreed. Article 33, no strike, no lockout. 34, defense of civil suits. 35, official bulletin boards. 36, contract copies. Those are all tentative agreements, and we don't intend to raise those. 39, stability agreement, and 40, savings clause. Those are tentatively agreement, and I don't believe we're impacted. The only thing that I just wanted to make sure of is that we can, the articles that are still outstanding, that you have not made a proposal for, that we haven't made a proposal for, that are still out there and may need a change, that we still have the ability to address them. And I think that one, we've already recognized that the city is going to be presenting something on 16, 26, 32, 37. Oh, and 20, did I say, and 29?
I have 16, 26, 29, 32, and 37.
Yes.
Those are the 5.
Those are the 5, I think, that are, with the understanding that the union's presenting something on Article 6.
Yeah.
And I think that addresses all the articles.
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be any surprises, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, 27, we had already did a proposal for that one.
Right.
The one that is directly,
Oh, yes, 27, yes, that one's already on the table.
yes,
So that one's gonna be a counter proposal. So that won't be a new proposal. I'm talking about, when we're talking about initial proposals, it's articles that haven't been addressed, that we wanna make sure that they're all, and if we review them and there's no changes, then, you know, that be it, but I think that there's proposed changes on the ones that I identified from the city.
our opinion is that the award only affects that article. I mean, obviously you guys have to do your due diligence, right? But that's why we believe it should only affect that article.
Okay, yeah, I think there were several articles impacted, I just need to look at it, I haven't looked at it. There were several articles that were raised in that arbitration. Okay, well, at this time, the city, on our side, we make that request, y'all consider it, please, and then we're gonna go back, I guess when we're done in this session, we're gonna go back and caucus and finalize our, the proposals and counter proposals that we can present today, and keep you advised on that.
We'll go and talk to after this and talk to them. Negotiating team.
Do you anticipate possibly any the proposals on the management rights today, or,
The management rights, no, there's actually 2 other proposals.
oh, there's 2 other proposals.
Yes. We're gonna caucus and speak about that, but we'll let you know, right?
Okay, the second one, is it gonna be a counter proposal, or? Because I only have that y'all have the management rights outstanding.
Well, let us caucus,
Okay,
and then we'll get our stuff together, and then you want to meet back here, about 1:30, 2 o'clock?
yeah, what time is it right now?
11:30.
Yeah, 1:30, 2 o'clock is
And that way
probably
we
good.
can kind of finalize, see what we have, and then see what we can do with the
Sure.
extension of the proposal.
That sounds good. Okay, all right. Very good, thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Public
We need to wait for the-
No,
Okay.
we can start. As we caucus, we went ahead and actually brought up 2 more articles.
Okay. We also have 2 articles to present. Also.
Okay, the new proposal that was just handed out will be article number 44. It's going to be called employee rights. Now, before, this might be able to be tied into article 10. We didn't know how that would work out or not, or just propose it as a brand new article. This is under employee rights. The city shall not publish, make, or enforce any regulations or directives that will interfere with personal lives of or off-duty activities of firefighters, except to the extent that such activities substantially affect the firefighter job performance while on duty.
And this is a new article, right?
This is a new article. It has not been submitted specifically in any articles previously.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So in Article 10 is duty hours, correct?
Yes.
It may be, yeah, it may be better on it, proposed on its own, unless we can find another article to organize it that has to do with the employee rights.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Is there a concern that raised this particular article or some
Yes.
issues? Because, you know, we do have like drug testing and things like that that do kind of, I guess, determine whether some off-duty activities would be hinder the operations or the performance of a firefighter duty. So that's not meant to
It's
affect
not
that,
meant to
right?
address
Okay.
that any form of illegal activity, even, pertaining to, drug use, alcoholism, anything along those lines, that's understood that, that those off-duty activities is not what we're limited to. This more refers to the recent attempts of procedure put out to basically dictate an all-encompassing kind of carte blanche power of the fire chief to be able to dictate what can and can't be done on off-duty hours, pertaining to basically exchanges, paybacks, time off, vacations, where we would need to find prior approval of any activities that we would be conducting on our off-duty hours.
Okay. And I just want to make sure I had the list. You said exchanges, paybacks, and something else.
Any annual leaves, vacation leave. We under injury type leave, we are limited to what we can do. We can't work part-time under those circumstances. But it basically avoiding that, any other, to be able to dictate what our leave is being taken for, or what can and can't be done during our leave within the legal aspects of the law.
So is this isn't so much with regard to getting approved leave, it's like,
This is the leave that we already have, either our off time
right?
or our leave that we've either done exchanges from the same rank, or our annual leave, our holidays that we decide to take
Okay,
as
so
The concern isn't the leave itself.
Yes.
It is
we're getting it
the,
approved,
yes,
like.
it is the
there's a process
activity,
to
whether
get-
volunteer or paid or anything, that there's a kind of a policy coming into place or might come into play that is gonna try to limit our off-duty activity, whether it is employment or any other legal, right, or volunteer, or anything that we do outside of work has to go essentially through the city or through our fire chief.
Okay.
And it's understood that our code of conduct, we still have to, maintain, basically abide by our code of conduct, where we're not gonna make the department look in a negative manner, or the city in that aspect. But beyond that, to not limit us to, you can't do anything without prior approval from the department.
So is this also, I heard you say relates to outside employment as well?
Yes.
Okay, So what right now, and just because I don't know about what the policy, the potential policy is, or what the procedures are.
Mhm.
I know that the city generally has an outside employment policy, but I'm not familiar with it and how it applies directly to the firefighters. How does that work now?
Right now, we
have
do have it in our
8.4.
contract.
We have 8.4 that states basically what we have
Is
to
that in the
do.
contract?
Yes, ma'am.
Under 8.4, this issue is already negotiated where we do report any part-time activity and we give an emergency contact number because in Article 3.
Okay, on 8.4,
For, it
it's under
references,
duties,
yes,
and I have here 8.4 currently states, all members of the fire department must have their current home and off-duty work address and telephone number registered with the fire chief. If changes occur, the fire chief or his or her designee must be notified within 5 business days of the change. Okay. And you're saying that this somehow relates to outside employment?
but this encompasses it.
Yeah.
And off-duty
We have to
work.
report it. We have to report to our chief where we are gonna be, but I guess our view on it is that we do not have to get permission granted.
That you don't have to get permission granted for off-duty work,
Work and
or, excuse me,
volunteer,
outside employment?
outside employment, volunteerism, whatever.
We can be part of organizations such as our association.
Currently, what do the firefighters do currently with regard to outside employment? Do they have to,
We just report it to the chief of our, any kind of secondary employment. It was limited to just secondary employment, but now what's being attempted is anything that forms a deal of compensation. So, you know, that can be kind of construed in different manners where depending on the interpretation, you might be getting compensated for this, you might be getting compensated for that.
and do you have any bargaining history or notes that will help me understand how 8.4 encompasses outside employment? I know it may encompass it by reporting the off-duty work address and telephone number. I guess, is that the only way it's related, that you have to report the off-duty work
Yes.
address and
Yes,
work
ma'am.
telephone number? Okay. Is this the only part in the contract that addresses off-duty work?
10.1 addresses our off time, is what is considered our off time. Which is, we have 24 regular hours of work and 48 hours off. Our fire chief's asking us to,
Report. 48 hours.
yeah, what we do, including volunteer work that we do, or any type of compensation, whether you own a business, you're on any boards, anything, I mean, basically it's all encompassing the policy that he's coming out with. And then he's also trying to limit what the reason why we can do an exchange. A very narrow definition of what we can do in an exchange.
And currently, how is an exchange done? Is that an exchange between two employees?
Yes.
Where you just basically cover for each other?
Yes,
And you do the exchange? Okay. Doesn't count towards
Same rate.
overtime?
Same
doesn't
Same
count-
rank,
Same rank.
yeah,
Same
same rank.
There are certain small instances where they're of different rank, which when they were assigned as an acting rank for that different amount of time. So he's an assistant driver, I'm a driver. If he's assigned as to further notice, he's basically encompassing the driver role. So at that time, I'm allowed to change with him.
Same rank and
If
responsibility.
if he's taken down to his regular rank, I can no longer exchange with him. The same thing, it's rank for rank, captain for captain, driver for driver.
Okay. Is there anything that the firefighters have in place with regard to that outside employment where that outside employment doesn't interfere with their primary employment of being a firefighter? And I'm asking this so that we can, I can know where to look and,
The 10.5 references ready for duty, I guess, is classified. Basically reporting for duty at their designated time.
Now, and firefighters work, or is everybody on a 24-hour shift with the exception of like
Staff.
administration?
Yes.
Administrative staff who's on a 40-hour work week? Okay. And here, the duty hours on Article 10 duty hours, 10.1B describes the 48-hour as a 40-hour rest period.
Yes.
Okay. What, I guess, are there situations where somebody would work on outside employment, somebody would work 24-hour shift and then maybe do, is there some other outside employment that also has 24-hour shifts where you wouldn't get a rest period? That may be a concern. I just don't know if that, if that has a potential for happening.
Our overtime,
Yeah.
does that
Good work.
the day before your own shift, or work 24 hours here?
Okay.
Or coming off a shift, and you get told to work, or asked or told, depending on the situation, to work overtime. When you already worked the 24 hours.
Okay. Now, what kind of outside employment, I guess, what are the popular areas of outside employment for firefighters?
Everything.
It encompasses there.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that have different trades in their department. Could be something time with the medical field, could be anything, construction, could be firefighters.
Okay.
Personal business entrepreneurs.
Transportation, we have a huge land import, so a lot of guys. deal with
Okay,
the-
I'm just trying to
yeah.
understand like what the dynamic looks like, or what kind of outside employment issues you were dealing with. Okay. Good. Okay, what I'll do is I will probably have a lot more questions on this, once I visit with my team, so we'll come back to this one, and, at the next meeting, I'll probably have a little bit more questions. But we will, look at this, and I think I understand, where this is coming from and what this is, trying to accomplish.
Yeah, it's called cause and effect.
Mhm.
Usually when something happens on one side, there's something that happens.
Right, and that's why I asked, but, there's always the reason that we have to talk about something, and
Yeah.
there's always an event that does that. And as I'm understanding that this is the event that did that was an outside employment policy, I guess proposed or something, or
Mhm.
if they're trying to implement an outside employment policy.
Right.
Okay,
And something like that, I mean, you're in a city that has collective bargaining for its members, and you just put a policy that's kind of restrictive instead of following the process that should be normal, which is negotiation. In the middle of negotiation, that kind of causes for pause and
I guess the biggest issue is the policy is trying to dictate our conditions of employment without going through it. So
in a nutshell.
Which would be in violation of Article 32.1 itself.
and let's see, what's 32.1?
That's,
Maintenance of standards.
Okay. So let's talk about Article 32.1, maintenance of standards. What does this article mean? What is it? Because we also have articles that establish management rights, correct? How does this maintenance of standard conflict or limit those management rights?
The minimum stands whatever is in the actual contract right now has been negotiated to it and maintained, because in the management rights under section, it states that you're utilizing the fire department in situations to protect life and property in any natural disaster or conflagration. It's understood that, under these extreme circumstances, we are, abided by this is your primary job and we have to respond here to perform our duty. That never came into question. The question was the outreach beyond that, what considers, a state of emergency. we have one idea, one definition of it, when they might say another. The department has, through this memo that was released, stated that because there are 41 members down, they're saying it's a state of emergency. Our argument is the fact that we're trying to correct an issue on our behalf when the city short-staffed us as it is. It reflects that the FTEs right now, because of the cadets, and we have 60, if I remember correctly,
I think 60 or 61.
60 or 61, that we're at full staff, except those cadets aren't coming out. The first class doesn't come out till, I believe, the end of January. The next one's probably in the summer, June, July. But they're saying that because of the short staffing of it, this is gonna correct that short staffing. It's not. The only attempt is to limit the off-duty capabilities of our members. So,
Okay, and so the maintenance of standards is basically,
Conditions of employment.
to
in
preserve
effect.
the conditions of employment that encompass, that are included in this agreement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that, it probably could have been foregone because of if he'd have just come to the union and talked to them about it, instead of just being, just putting it out there without conversing with them, especially during negotiations. But, the statute itself, under 174, allows the negotiation of those conditions of employment
Okay.
and working conditions. So, it's just, this is kind of like what we're talking about in the grievance. You want to address those issues which can be addressed in the contract, and the language that we're proposing clears that up pretty solidly.
Okay.
So,
And there was a memo that was sent out?
yes,
A memo and
and a policy.
policy.
No, it's currently being rewritten, but it hasn't been rescinded. So we're still in that gray area of where it's still there, not being enforced yet, but it's active.
When is the policy?
Last Tuesday.
Okay. Other than the chief, have you discussed this policy with anybody else from the city that I could get information?
During that meeting, the city attorney's zone was here, and yes,
What'd you do?
Bowtie. That's
His own called them Bowtie.
Bowtie.
You were the
Okay.
So they were both here during that meeting, along with fire chief and assistant chief.
Okay. We will look at this article, and I will look at the policies the outside employment policies that were sent to y'all, and I will look at how we'll discuss that during these negotiations. Okay. All right.
And
Oh, sorry.
the next proposal, also a brand new article.
Okay.
We're gonna figure out where to put it in, try and put it in one of the Article 45 maternity leave. Article 45 maternity leave.
Mhm.
Firefighters who learn they are pregnant may report their condition as soon as practical to the immediate supervisor. Firefighters will be allotted paid leave for the duration of pregnancy and up to 3 months postpartum.
Is male or female?
Firefighter.
We do not discriminate.
So if your wife is pregnant, you get time off?
No.
They are,
Pregnant.
that they are
The
pregnant.
actual pregnancy.
This is, I guess that would be like paternity,
Paternity.
right? This is maternity.
So that they
For someone,
themselves.
someone who's pregnant. Did you say the baby's house?
No, they themselves.
And currently what is done for, any kind of maternity leave? Does the city have a general policy or?
The city does have a general policy, because we have a collective bargaining, it doesn't actually apply to us. So, yeah, so we have no current, I guess, it's not really addressed in our contract in a specific manner, and I think we wanted to change that by proposing some language to. We've had more females join our department, and we want to make sure that we address this for the future. That way it's kind of more clear and concise as far as what is the process.
Okay. Currently, if a firefighter learns that they're pregnant, are they put on limited duty, or do you know?
I think right now,
We've only had 2 cases.
You only have
And it's
two?
handled those two were handled case by case.
Okay,
And which the way the first one is current, the prior one, the way that one was allowed to be handled, even this memo now, that recently came out about exchanges and paybacks or time of leave, kind of affects the way that one was handled.
oh, there were maybe exchanges allowed or something like that?
During that, and she was here earlier, but.
She covered a whole month on basically getting payback. She worked the exchanges before going on leave, and then she got those paybacks.
Okay, I see.
And then on top of that, she used her own personal leave, annual leave, and sick leave beyond that.
so they're allowed to go 8 to 5. They're given the option, maybe to come here, do some work here, but I guess, they're exposed to a lot of stuff on the line, being a firefighter with their firefighter gear, but at the same time, them being here at the administration center, you still get a lot of ambulances, a lot of fire trucks that come through the building, we pick up supplies here, so at the same time, they're kind of exposed to those same substances that they were exposed on the line, so I think we want to have something where they're allowed to stay home and not be exposed, not expose their fetus to some of the same chemicals that, firefighters are, usually have a high risk of contracting.
What's the, we'll look at what the city policy is as well, and see what the civilian employees get, and we'll put that into.
And you might want to tie into what your earlier article was with
For the
seriously,
yes.
so we tie our moments into that. So that we can tie
And I think with city employees, they have avenues to maybe do certain different things around the city. But I think when it comes to female firefighters, their line of work is a little different. They're exposed to different things, so I think you can't really, I guess, sometimes group them into, having the same policy in place for them to.
Okay. Very good. Okay, and then, okay, we'll look at this, and if we have any questions, I'll let you know. And then, were those the 2 articles that y'all had
Yes.
today? Okay, so I have 2 articles.
Yeah.
And one more,
Oh, okay.
just need.
This is is a counter proposal to Article that you
Proposed, but
Oh.
then we went back on, which
Yes.
was 10.4.
Oh, the one we just went, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we had put a proposal on.
Yes, you guys had proposals on. I
Yeah,
just
our
want to
pro-
clarify before we actually officially counter propose.
Sure,
I know you guys
that's-
were gonna work on maybe changing some wording or,
Okay, I have to look at that. Let me go look at that. I don't have it with me in front of me.
because we have if that's the case, we do have.
What was the wording that, I don't have the proposal in front of me.
It was at the end of 10.4, if I'm not mistaken.
Do you have my two?
Yeah. Article 10.
The one that we proposed.
That's the one you.
This is the one you proposed to us.
Okay. Yeah, yeah, no, I'll use yours.
Then you took it back and then, no, we just got the back.
This is what the date is. This is the date.
And we were gonna clarify on 10.4, that last sentence, is that what it was?
Yes.
Let me get clarification on that, and then
Okay.
I'll
'cause we-
provide it to you and see what, I had to go look at my notes.
And you guys had a counter to ours, we're ready for that one as well,
The, on which one, the
the 10.4.
10.4, okay, and 10.
I think that a Portuguese County supervisor denied and it's going to provide notice.
Yes, that was the issue raised, the fact that we were discussing the power, I guess, or not the power, but the infringement on the sentence before that, which says that any employee shift exchange will pay back hour for hour, date of payback must be stated on the work exchange form, but may be changed as needed and agreed upon by employees. So our biggest issue was that the question was, could the supervisor deny that? Was that the intent of it? I know you guys said that you were mostly concerned with the fact that supervisors don't know who's coming in that day. I think that addressed that.
Yeah,
An
I think
issue.
that was one of the big issues, was just basically the discussion and clarification we needed to provide, is it just merely notice, or is there gonna be some sort of approval denial system?
Yes.
So I need to confirm that with this.
And I think, in reference to our earlier memo, we were gonna add one sentence to that, just kind of, describing what an exchange should be, I guess.
That may be helpful, because we're not gonna, we can understand it here, but people who are gonna be looking at the contract, 4 years from now,
Yeah,
and if this language remains in the contract, we may need to know what an exchange is.
And just for historical, that last line he read about hour for hour, that was proposed from the city last time. And all that language in there, changing all
Yeah.
that.
And I think one of the main reason that we were proposing changes was because we were having some problems or not problems, we were having situations where a supervisor did not know who was coming in, and when somebody else came in, they were surprised, or there may be somebody missing or running late, and they needed to know how to fill those positions for duty that day. Okay.
so, yeah, like I said, if you guys, when you guys are ready, we can go ahead and come to the proposal.
Okay, I need to get, on that particular one, I need to talk to the chief about it, and I don't know that I'll be able to get him before the end of the day. So,
He's not the one.
yeah, so I would need to get clarification from him before we could confirm that, and then we can work on the additional sentence that you're requesting.
So just
So-
for additional information, for when it says the interpretation of exchanges and paybacks does not carry the same meaning. The exchanges is the one being requested for, and that one is the one that's limited to 5.
Oh, okay.
Which pertains into this article, but in that same article where it refers to the paybacks, it does not, it's not understood that it's the same 5. It's all it's stating is the fact of you have an individual work for somebody, that individual needs to pay him back.
So you're asking to remove the caps
No,
on
the cap for the exchanges has always been there.
Okay, that's
We're
okay.
always at. The payback, because of the fact of gentlemen, work for a lot of different individuals. From what the city negotiated the last time, those individuals that were worked for need to pay the individual that was working back.
Is that's currently not capped, is it?
That's not capped.
Right, but you just want to clarify that.
Just to clarify that,
Okay.
that right now is not capped. The cap for the 5 exchanges per month is capped, and we've understood that, and that's been since we were asking right now, our members over here for longer, and we can't remember how long it's been there. We've always known that it's capped at 5, and that's never.
For the exchanges,
For
but
the
not for the
exchange,
payback.
paybacks.
Because the paybacks, like y'all say, you already owe somebody. City of course doesn't want anybody to get away with not paying back those hours, and that's why 4 years ago, that language was requested to be hour for hour mentioned in there, so if someone knows they need to pay, where we're seeing the trouble is in this policy that Chief wrote, he's trying to restrict everything, including paybacks.
Oh,
Where
is
he-
payback addressed in that particular
Yes.
policy?
He's
Okay.
trying to say it's
Limited to
any
5.
combination up to 5. Whereas the intent of this article was never that, the negotiation was never that.
So you all are going back to the letter that was issued out last week?
Yes.
Is that, okay, okay, now I understand.
Oh, and then I need to get more clarity, yeah,
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah.
get clarity on
Try to-
that.
I sent it to you.
Yeah, let me just say that.
Yeah, it talks about the IRS.
No,
Okay. So, yeah, then I'll definitely need to go back and look at that, so I understand, what that is encompassing, and so currently, that's what you're understanding, that's what the contract says, there's no cap on payback.
There's no cap on
And you want to make sure that there's clarity on that.
just
And
because,
so-
like I say, I mean, we understand that you might not know that, and apparently with the way it was written in the memo, it's not with the same understanding.
Okay, so that may be in conflict.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the way we've been operating, for years at a time, so we just wanted to put something in writing that's already in practice.
Okay. So for next time, we'll work on okay. Next time, provide an answer.
Is the payback on like an honor system?
No,
No, it's
Oh,
documented.
it's documented.
Yes, and you have to submit the forms, both the exchange form, where you have to list the payback date, and the payback date form, where you have to list the date you already worked. So it's a formal, it's digital, it's not an actual paperwork, and they have it in a digital file. I see Mr. Lopez here outside is the one that.
But it goes on the official roster, it gets listed as exchange payback. And so you can go find that form, and then you can see what the payback is, and you go back to the official roster of that other payback or exchange date, compare, make sure that the guys did work.
So if you have a driver that's exchanged with a payback request from another individual and he's put in for 3, then it's written down where you would have to pay him, the driver back those 3 shifts. Right?
yes.
Each exchange is an individual form.
Each one, they don't do like 3.
No,
advance,
one
5
form
advance,
is-
one for one.
Yeah. And basically states September 1st, he'll be paying me back 24 hours, 12 hours that he owes me from this date. So I'm saying, it's that information in the morning, the district chief's put it on the official roster. It puts, that it says payback, so you know it's this day, you go look for that individual's name. If you were to wanted to audit, you could easily audit those sheets in our individual files, electronic files that we have. They used to be paper form 10 years ago.
And it can be for any reason that the person is not gonna be there, as long as if there's an understanding between the same
Yes,
rank and file.
Yes.
That was the, again, that was the understanding when it was negotiated. The memo itself now wanted to limit or identify exactly what reasons you can get an exchange for, which is I understood as long as it's, you know, member for member, rank for rank, with the understanding that it was gonna be paid back at a future date, either being what we would sometimes do is called a flim flam, so I'd show up one day earlier, the guy would show up one day later just because he needed that day, or because the individual had no more leave.
If you see people's days, people.
Yeah, we
Flim flam is
because
just, basically just, I go work
today I
one
work
day.
for you, tomorrow you work for me. We flim flam our shifts, A, B, C. If I'm a B shifter, I exchange with an A shifter, we flim flam that particular day, so we call
And
it.
that's
But still,
acceptable.
it's still an exchange.
It's
It's still
the,
exchange, it's still
yeah,
payback,
that's what I'm
yeah.
saying, it can go anywhere from that or up until the way it's allotted, up to 3 months.
4 months.
4 months, sorry, up to 4 months. If the day needs to be extended, that's where the whole, formal request on a paperwork, you advise your supervisor, or, you know, Mr. Adam's gonna come in for me today after all, but he's gonna pay me back following this week. You put in the change right there. They're like, okay, so now you know they are gonna show up that employee's gonna show up that day, and the payback won't happen until later.
And the payback is someone goes and does your shift.
Just something does this.
It's not monetary exchange.
It's not monetary
Somebody
exchange.
does the shift.
And if I'm mistaken, the hour for hour was in when the senior requested that the last time, that was the intention of it to not, you know, hey, work
I have
for me and
discrepancies.
I'll,
Yes, I have discrepancies in the.
Yeah, so you didn't work more,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
What happens in the event that your person that is supposed to pay back doesn't show up? What does the city do?
They get the DNR, which is in our contract, did not report. So they will get disciplined.
It's
you know,
the person that was supposed to pay back or the person that was originally shipped? Scheduled to show up?
Whoever's supposed to show up,
Coverage.
whether it's an
Because it was
exchange or a
documented.
payback. It's a binding contract, is what we call it.
whoever was supposed to show up for that
Yes.
day, like I said, exchange. or
Because they'll
payback.
call you,
If I'm
you're in Disney,
doing
and they
this,
call
I
you, you're
promise
not here
you,
today.
And if I don't show up, I get disciplined. They have a right to discipline me and actually revoke those privileges for a lot of time.
And that again is an important reason why, I guess, notice supervisor, if someone's not showing up, they want to make sure that they're looking for the right person. Okay. Mhm. Okay. So I guess it's my turn? Okay. I have 2 articles. And they're back to back, so I didn't have to. Does everybody have their articles? So this is City of Laredo's proposal, Article 37. And I was fighting with the formatting, so if there's something missing or kind of off, it's not intentional. The red part is what the proposed changes. And really, it's an addition to the grievance procedure. It is to allow, and let me just read it. The step 1, we're adding another step. And it's step 1, and it's prior to submitting a grievance and in order for the city to have notice and an opportunity to correct any alleged unintentional violations of this agreement, a firefighter who is aggrieved shall seek to informally resolve the grievance with his or her supervisor and up the chain of command, ending with the appropriate, and I believe it's deputy chief is the supervising person, right? It doesn't end with the assistant chief. I think it,
There's a deputy.
There's a district chief,
And then
or
a
there's your captain, district chief, deputy chief, assistant chief, and.
okay. So right now it's deputy chief, and I just need to confirm both with you and the chief, the fire chief, who would be the last line of this, and of course, we will accept any counter proposals on that. But it's basic, within 5 days of the calendar days of the employee's actual or constructed knowledge of the occurrence of the event causing the problem. And what this is to do is to kind of give an opportunity for things that happen because of the human element, or, an acting pay wasn't paid correctly and it was kind of a mistake. It allows the opportunity for something to get resolved before the entire process is invoked, taking up the union's time and resources and the city's time and resources for something that can be resolved fairly easily. So what the city is just asking is, we're asking for this particular step to attempt to go through the chain of a command, and if it cannot be, resolved, you still have the opportunity to still file the grievance. We're just asking that step be taken while this issue is occurring. And I think 5 calendar days is fairly reasonable in that it had just happened. It allows the firefighter to get to their chain of command, allow it to go up, but yet still allow them the time that they need in order to prepare their grievance if they see that it's not getting resolved. So it doesn't take away anything, it just adds a little element of like, okay, well, let's see if we can work this out before it goes through the full process, and then the process continues. So that's the proposal.
And this 5 days between each, right? Or 5 days all the way up to deputy chief.
So, that's an interesting question. I think that it was the initial going to your supervisor within 5 days, and we can implement something in there that says, hey, this needs to be looked at fairly quickly so that they still have the ability to file the grievance within the 12 days, or if we need to add more days. I'm not being a super stickler for like the time periods. I'm just, we're just proposing this concept, and if we need to work out the time periods and allow reasonable time for this additional step to occur, we're more than willing to listen to that, because I'm not the one that's in the operations and having to deal with these issues. So we'd be extremely happy to hear recommendations on that, and thoughts on that.
Just to clarify, the grievance, you say it's basically an informal grievance that's gonna go with the association or without their immediate supervisor?
So normally, like if there's something, and I'm thinking of like a pay that's in the contract that doesn't get paid correctly, and that really doesn't necessitate the whole entire grievance procedure. It's something that could normally get resolved pretty quick. And there may be other instances and stuff that could still be resolved within that. When you're informally going up the chain of command, it's just like, hey, I've got this problem, can we fix it? And if the union representation needs to get involved, then they usually get involved anyway. I don't think that there should be any issue with that, especially if it's a grievance issue. It's not a disciplinary matter, it's a grievance issue. So,
And that's understandable. I guess one worry on our part is if with the way you're going up the chain of command, the way it's supposed to, something's wrong, tell your captain or chief, and go up the chain of command that way. That with the practices, how it's happened, or the request by the chief, the way it is, would limit the interaction of the association during those 5 days, because I've been directed, and I'm pretty sure the previous president has been directed also, where there's an issue, we go directly to the fire chief. We are not to talk to his deputies or contact any district chiefs or supervisors. Why that is in writing, honestly, I'm not sure that was a request by the fire chief.
okay.
So
We need to take that into consideration.
So I'm saying, I understand this process, so to try and, curtail the actual filing of grievance for basically every single instance, if it can be corrected at a lower level.
And let me point something out, the way that I wrote it, or I'm presenting it to you, the only thing that has to happen is that the notification to it says the notification of the change of command has to happen within 5 days of the employee's actual knowledge. And that's an attempt to seek to informally resolve. It doesn't inhibit the step number 2 that allows them to file that. As long as they did a notification and attempt to resolve it, I don't believe that that's going to stop them from
How's
having
that
a
gonna be
grievance.
documented? Because it could fall. He doesn't tell anybody, how do we preserve the rights of that firefighter?
I guess, you could possibly, you're right, we need to discuss those issues, like the little bugs in that entire system. It could be by an email, or say, hey, this is the issue I have in writing, just to document the time that it was done. We can discuss that. I know that there's a lot of other fire departments that do that, and let me find out how they take care of those kinds of
We don't
informal.
have city emails.
Huh?
We don't have city emails.
Okay, so,
Let me ask you a quick question, Ralph. See, it's the way my mind works. So the issue is what?
the issue is just trying to get things that can be simply resolved, whether they're inadvertent mistakes or something that's not intended.
Has that happened in the past?
I actually don't, it was a request from the city to be able to resolve issues before having to go through the whole grievance procedure.
Right, and so, I've done this a few years. I've lived under a grievance procedure for 25 years and worked with other cities here in the state for the last 18. Most grievance procedures, you're not gonna have any decision-making power given at a company officer level or even a battalion chief level. Those aren't gonna be, there's not gonna be any ramifications or decisions made by those individuals. So normally, the next step goes to the chief of the department. So if you're looking at possibly some language that would encourage some dialogue between the union, because that's where it eventually would be. I mean, certainly under the DFR, under a contract, an employee can file a grievance, through the grievance process. But normally it has to, there's some mechanism for it to go through the grievance committee.
Right.
And I point to the executive board because oftentimes it falls on the executive board's decision to do that. And so they're the keepers of the contract. So are you looking for some language that would allow them to, during the 12 days that they're looking at it, that would give the grievance committee, and I'll just leave it at that, the opportunity to discuss the issue and maybe a resolution to it before it gets to the chief's desk, or?
Well, that may be something. Some of the things that I was thinking, the example that I was thinking of does allow the people in the chain of command to actually resolve something that they have the ability to resolve. Say there was a scheduling error and it didn't show, or an error in the exchange, and somebody's not getting paid the correct amount or something like that, and it's something that can be fixed administratively or at that level, so it doesn't have to go all the way to the top.
Yeah, I guess if we
And
had
that's why I guess we're looking at, okay, what line of supervisor do we go to? Because if we're gonna go to the chief, then at that point, maybe then there should be the ability for, once an actual grievance is filed, if it's not something that can be resolved, and this is for unintentional
I've
things,
had
you know?
grievance processes
So-
that have that language, the grievance will be attempted to be resolved at the lowest level, which is the company officer, and I go to my lieutenant, they shorted me on this. His reply is, I'm sorry, can't do that. So I just wanted to kind of get an idea of where the issue is, and then maybe if you have an example of an issue with Laredo, that something like that's happened, we can do it, but. So essentially,
And honestly, like, when talking about this article and the proposed change was not, when I was speaking to my team in the city, was not necessarily to identify or address a specific issue, because I don't believe there has been any.
okay.
It's to open the line of communication and allow for informal early resolutions on items that can be resolved informally and early. That's not always the case, if we each have a different understanding of a provision in the contract and we don't agree, that's not something that's gonna go up the chain of command and this, that's not gonna be something that can be informally resolved and then we go through the procedure. So
Can we
this is
just,
to narrow the focus to the things that, that we need to, talk about and go through the procedure and go to arbitration if necessary. And resolve things that, things that are inadvertent and can be fixed that don't necessarily need an act of Congress.
but
So
the
to
way
say.
it's written, it doesn't give us the option to just skip this step. Actually put in the step that limits us to 5 days. Because it doesn't say, oh, you have the option to go to step 2, disregard this step. You're making us go through a step, like I said earlier, go up the chain of command where it can fall death eaters. So you're kind of taking that ability away from us to grievance something, the way it's written.
The way it was
That
written.
was not the intention, and if there's better language that would help address that, we're more than willing to consider it. But that's not the intention at all. The intention is not to inhibit or frustrate the process in any way. It's to allow for communication on the items that can be resolved early on. They don't have to.
I guess to add some light to this, to not be as specific, because this actually prolongs also the procedure itself.
Actually, it did not. The way that we saw it was things can
We
keep
lose 5
going.
days.
Things can keep going, because you still have the same 12 days, and if you notify the chain of command, that doesn't stop the ability for you to file your grievance.
Yeah, so the city's not married to this language.
No.
We can come up with some counter language.
Yeah.
And if it's something as simple as like, within that 12 days, I'll ask my lieutenant if he can fix this. If he can, then it goes up the road. And so we can,
Okay.
I think we have another.
Yeah, and the reason the main reason that I kind of shortened, like, hey, you need to notify your supervisor quicker, was because if you could resolve that before the end of the 12 days, and that takes away the necessity to file the grievance, but it's still, the process keeps moving. The intention is not to stop the process or have that requirement. If you tell your supervisor and it's already going up, you've already fulfilled that element. So, do you know what I mean? It is just to,
You're just trying to create a contract language related way to try to resolve it at some point prior to it going to a full-blown, let's get the list and get going type of thing.
right.
So I think we can work with that.
Actually, yeah, we can work with that because, like I say, I guess, kind of the intent of it is something that's already happening as it is. Majority of the issues right now, something comes up, that's what I said, like, the chief wants for us to go specifically to him instead of contacting him. That's why I'm saying this, kind of with what his request is,
I
would
see.
exclude the association from contacting the other ranks because, let's say, it was a request by the fire chief. So if any issues come directly to him or the assistant chief if he's out, and most of our issues get resolved at that time.
Okay,
Um,
so we need to incorporate that in there, but the concept is we just
The
want to.
the concept,
Yeah.
the concept of what, I guess what you're trying to put here is something that's already in play and working, it's
Okay.
just putting it actually down on language. We'll work with it, like I say, normally I take it up to the fire chief anyways, within 1 or 2 days, if it's within his power, gets it corrected. Anything beyond that, we agree with the chief, he's like, no, I have to go to legal, or it's kind of out of my hands.
Okay,
Like, okay, chief, just relax it now we're gonna be able
we'll
to.
go through the
So
procedure.
just, it gives them a heads up, but also gives them the courtesy of, if you can handle it, have the fire chief handle it. And sometimes it's simple as a phone call, hey, this is done wrong, this procedure was done wrong.
And one of the things, we don't, sometimes things happen immediately and it could be something that could be fixed by saying, hey, can you fix this? And I don't want some firefighters to think that they have to wait to get the association involved either to get it, but we're not saying that they can. But we just want to make sure that the lines of communication are open and that if it's something that's inadvertent or not intentional, that it can just be resolved.
So that's
Well, I think it's also a hiccup for this, and this is forgetting on our part, a lot of times when hiring over time, you can not specifically stated in the contract of how the policy is gonna be agreed to. But when they incorrectly hire, now you're gonna have the ability of, the station captain calling, trying to address it, the station captain calling the district chief, and it's gonna cause, I guess, another little wrinkle in where that might be that one hiccup where this comes into play. And that's just, kind of a heads up.
Sure, and you know the ins and outs more than we do, because you deal with it every day, so we're more than willing to consider some language and just would like to continue discussing this concept.
I mean, even with this current policy chief put out on Tuesday, that was the first step we've done. We haven't filed a grievance. We came to talk to him, so
Okay.
we didn't agree with the policy.
That one, and then, the next one I have. The next one I have is on Article 38, the arbitration procedure. Okay, does everybody have it? Okay, the first change, and we went through the contract, was we added the Federal Mediation Conciliation Service, which you had initially proposed. I think, just like I was, you were having trouble with formatting and
Yes,
all that other stuff. So I went through and I think that we caught everything, but if we didn't, the intention is at the ultimate that we include the AAA or the FMCS on everything that has to do with the arbitrator. We have, so it looks like I added a D, but this is actually, it's language that is similar to what was at the end of the contract on 38.2, which had to do with the arbitrator's jurisdiction, basically, or arbitrator's authority. I thought that it would be better the neutral arbitrator, and picking the neutral arbitrator, that everyone is aware of what the arbitrator's authority is, especially the arbitrator. That's the person sometimes that we need to make sure they understand. So the initial, 38.2, the original language read, the arbitrator shall not have the power to add, to amend, modify, or subtract from the provisions of this agreement in arriving at his or her decision on the issue or issues presented, and shall confine his or her decision to the interpretation of this agreement. The arbitrator shall decide only the precise issue submitted for arbitration, shall have no authority to determine any other issue not so submitted. The decision of the arbitrator shall be final and binding upon the city and association. So I moved the art authority up, and I redid the languages a little bit. This is language that, I have used that says the same thing, but is, I think, maybe a little bit more clear, and we have agreed to this in other fire contracts, but it says the arbitrator's authority. The arbitrator's authority shall be limited to the interpretation and application of the terms of this agreement. The arbitrator shall have no authority to add to, subtract from, or modify the applicable provisions of this agreement in arriving at a decision on the issue or issues presented. The arbitrator shall confine their decision to the interpretation, application, enforcement of this agreement as applicable to the facts and circumstances presented. The arbitrator shall confine themselves to the issues properly submitted to the arbitration and shall have no authority to determine any issues not properly submitted by the parties. There was another sentence in that was taken out on 38.2, the decision of the arbitrator shall be final and binding upon the parties, but that's going to be On H, we added the or FMCS. And I apologize on the lettering. I was fighting with this for a long time and I just couldn't fix it. After M, it just wouldn't cooperate with me, so those letters need to be fixed. But in terms of the format, I'm gonna focus on the substance. One of the issues that comes up with arbitrations sometimes is letter M.
The second end.
The second
I'm sorry,
M.
Rob.
I know. I knew you were gonna laugh.
Yeah, that's our.
I knew you were gonna laugh, but that's not why he's laughing. Because we have this fight all the time.
No, it's something else, go ahead.
Yeah, but as evidence, the evidence by affidavit and filing documents, the arbitrator may receive and consider evidence in the form of an affidavit, but shall give appropriate weight to any objections made. All documents shall be considered by the arbitrator and shall be filed at the hearing. There's a sentence in there that says, there shall be no post-hearing briefs. We're proposing to delete that because we have found that there are some arbitrations that can be pretty complex and last many days. There's some arbitrations that you can get done in a day, and there's some arbitrations that take a week or 2 weeks. It just depends on what the issue becomes. And it gives both sides the opportunity to either say they do want closing briefs or say they don't. A lot of, and it's been half and half on the arbitrations that I've done, where we either do them or we don't. Sometimes when the evidence is so much, and the arbitrator actually asks for briefs, sometimes they even ask for transcripts to help him come up with the award. We want the ability to do that. I think it serves both and benefits both parties to be able to at the end, if we don't do it verbally, present to the arbitrator your closing argument with the evidence that you believe supports your case. In light of that, on N, the close of the hearings, the arbitrator shall ask whether parties have any further proof to offer, the witnesses to be heard, or closing briefs to be submitted. Upon receiving negative replies, the arbitrator shall declare and note that the hearing is closed. So if there are some closing briefs, usually the arbitrator will set a time limit in either a week or 2 weeks to turn those in. And then once those are turned in, then the hearing would be closed. They would declare the hearing closed, and they usually send out a written communication on that. On P, we took out the last sentence, and we'll address this later on. The award of the arbitrator shall be binding and non-appealable. One of the things is that in this process, there was no right of appeal at all with regard to the arbitration decision. The arbitrator's jurisdiction and authority has already been set out previously, and we moved it and added some clarification to it. But there is no mechanism for either party, if the arbitrator goes beyond that authority. If they start to add to the contract, the way that this particular provision is written right now, it's final and binding on both parties, and we have no say-so in it. And we would have to negotiate that again at the table. So we took that out and addressed it in R, which I'll go talk about. But in Q, I think this is a really important one, the time of the award. The award shall be rendered by the arbitrator within 30 days of the close of the hearing. I think that is extremely important, as we just recently saw. It's very important and very critical that when we're dealing with an important contractual issue that is subject of a grievance and an arbitration, that we find out as soon as possible, what the answer is. And that way we can address it and fix it and follow that. Sometimes it involves money, sometimes it doesn't. And it involves a lot of, everybody's time.
So that was the purpose for not having briefs, so we can do it in a timely fashion.
Well, in this
I'm just-
particular case, yeah.
I'm
Well,
just speculating.
well, sometimes the arbitrator has, if you do briefs, it helps the arbitrator with the evidence and the arguments, especially if it's a complex and large arbitration. I think it helps focus them, and I have had great success in getting awards done very quickly within the 30 days, after submitting a closing brief, and usually closing briefs
yeah,
are like
most of that.
a week or
Yeah.
two. So I have always found that it helps expedite the process. And I have been the winner and loser of awards in both of them, so it doesn't, I don't have any bias towards it. I just think it helps the process and it helps all the parties involved. With regard to R on the effect of the award and the appeal, we have added this, the arbitrator's award as to matters properly grievable under this article shall be final and binding on the parties. That has not changed. This is the addition that we have with regard to how the very limited instances where you may be able to appeal. Not just because you don't like the award. That's not one of these instances. It's whether the arbitrator goes outside that authority, and some other sole instances. The parties understand and agree that filing a grievance concerning a matter properly grievable under this article constitutes an election of remedies. That means that you've chosen, we have bargained and contracted, and this is how we're gonna resolve this issue. A party may file an appeal to the arbitrator's award in the district or county court of Webb County, Texas, strictly and solely limited to the following grounds. Number one, that the arbitrator exceeded his or her authorities provided under this agreement. Say, that they did not stick to the issue, or they added, modified, or subtracted from our contract. That's what they're not allowed to do. The arbitrator's decision was somehow procured by fraud, collusion, or other unlawful means. I've actually never seen that, and of course, that's a high threshold, but this protects the integrity of the process and the award and the arbitrator's award. That the arbitrator's decision represents a clear and manifest error of the law. Say that there is and this is also a high burden. It's not something that, hey, I don't agree with this. If there was something that just really sets forth that this is a clear manifest error of the law, that there's an issue on the application of this, but it's in violation of the Federal Labor Standards Act, and the arbitrator's award requires the city to do something that would be in violation of the Federal Labor Standards Act, and that's something we're like, okay, we're bound by this, but it violates a federal law. Now, what do we do? Because now we're subject to liability from that. And that's kind of an example of, it has to be extreme. It's a clear and manifest error of the law.
I've never seen that in any contract.
That's in corpus contract.
I'll have to talk to Johnny about that.
Yep. Talk to Craig. Craig wrote it.
Did he?
Yeah.
That's why he's retired. Attorney.
And we worked on it, but he's the one that added that one. The form of award, so those are the very limited reasons for appeal. And it's very hard to reach those levels of appeal. It's, if necessary, it provides protection for all parties involved. The form of the award, we're adding, before the award it was in writing, but was only a summary. We added, the arbitrator shall issue a written opinion and ruling with respect to the issues presented. I think if it's important enough to go to an arbitration on a grievance regarding the interpretation of a contract, I think it's really important for both parties, no matter what the award is, to understand why the arbitrator awarded what they awarded. How the evidence, everybody, we each side have our position, but the arbitrator is the final and binding decider of our issue. And I think it is important to understand how the evidence came into play, the reasoning, the law that applies, and why the arbitrator found without a word. And I just think it provides better clarification and understanding of the contract that we have, issues that we may need to bargain later or clarify. And I think it just presents hopefully keeps that mistake from happening again. History repeats itself, so if there's already something in place and it's something similar, or they can see what the evidence or the facts or circumstances was, it will help in that scenario. On T, delivery of award to the parties, we added work, FMCS, and we also added that email service is a acceptable way of delivery. Everyone kind of emails now, except I did have that, Ralph, I think you were with me, had that one arbitrator that still sent everything by snail mail,
Oh, yeah.
didn't even do fax or anything. And he got upset because he was printing all the thousands of pages that we actually sent him. So, on V, we added or FMCS on 2 paragraphs of that. 38.2, we took that portion and integrated it into, that would be the new section D, and then we put the final and binding to all parties. That we add, it's in the one that looks like it's R, but I don't know if that's the proper letter, but the one R on the top of page 3, that's where the final and binding sentence was moved to. So we didn't take them out, we just moved them to address the issues that were already in the procedure. And that's what we have for our arbitration procedure.
So let me ask you this, just looking at this, number one is the 30-day
Yeah.
period to require them. I know the issue here is, took almost 12 months or 8 months, whatever it was, to get the award back. That's probably, how many months? 10 months. So that's one glitch, and maybe perhaps opening up the organizations that provide arbitrators a pathway to that. I understand that controlling factors of a grievance procedure can control the limitations of an arbitrator, as far as you can't extend it over 30 days, but there are also other extenuating circumstances that we've had with arbitrators, I've had with arbitrators, where something happens in the family, they have a death in the family, COVID, I mean, there's myriad of things. So is 30 days reasonable? And I'm just saying this kind of to both parties.
Right.
Is a 30-day period reasonable? And my questions, going back to the whole article, is what are the issues with the current article that have prompted these, and I'll put it out there, radical changes in the process? Because this process has worked for at least 20 years. So, you know, and
Yeah,
we
you're
need
right.
this.
Well, and I'll say it works until it doesn't work, and we're trying to make this process better.
But the only failure so far with this process in the recent history is the delay on the
delay,
award.
and that's why I'm actually I've asked for an additional session in order to be able to fully analyze and view this to figure it out. But in my review today, one of the issues that I saw was that when I looked at this arbitration award, I don't have any history in it. I don't know the event that prompted this grievance. I don't know the players in this grievance or the witnesses. I don't know the relevant facts. And when I read this award as somebody who is dealing with your contract and trying to understand, okay, what was the issue and how did the arbitrators award, what did she find was the intent of the provision and what the provision means, I didn't get any of that information. I have no idea what happened other than there was an issue. There was a past practice found. These kinds of issues before, but then it didn't explain anything else. It said the city was in violation and that these issues should be discussed at the collective bargaining table.
No,
And so-
it's some
Right,
may. So I
some
read it
issues.
over.
So it was a very thin arbitration award, meaning that it was a summary and it didn't have a lot of information. You know, just like the collective bargaining agreement, the reason that we make records for the things that we're agreeing to is so that if there's a question, people can go back and look into the intent and understanding of the provisions. I think that is extremely important when we're arguing about the intent and the meaning of a provision that's in the current contract that's subject to the grievance procedure. Because if there's a finding on this, for instance, okay, there's a finding on this and the provision stays and it stays for 30 more years, you know, because we've had an understanding, people along the way may forget and they may not be able to find the record that says what we intended, and and then they see this arbitration award, and the arbitration award says, you know, this activity was in violation, but it doesn't explain why, when, what happened, and that's, I think that is one of the failures or the small things that I think that we can improve upon on our arbitration procedure here. The other thing I think that is not so much a problem, but I foresee a problem when we get an arbitrator that just goes outside of the authority of being able to interpret this contract, and then either party gets stuck with an arbitration award that adds, modifies, subtracts, or totally does something outside that authority, and there's no mechanism currently to be able to address that.
So I don't know when this was awarded. I think Carlos said it was 2 days ago. So you have 10 days to appeal it to district court. That's the choices that the cities have. I read this over lunch. Didn't take me all that much. I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, but I did understand it. The issue that you keep bringing up, and it confused me because I've never seen a lot of stuff, but it says to clear up any and all confusion, vagueness, or ambiguities concerning the phrase and the appropriate uses for ABL now and in the future, the party should certainly address this issue during the next contract negotiations. For the reasons stated and explained above, this grievance is sustained, and it's basically, I mean, it's a simple award. The city shall cease and desist denying firefighters use of ABL for community service and community outreach events. That's simple to fix. Or assistant chief, or anybody who's going to say that that's outside of the law. That said, I mean, I've seen a lot of contract grievance processes that come up, but I've done 3 contract grievances here in Laredo and had no problems with the process at all. I've had a couple disciplinary issues, but we'll take what you're proposing and give it a good look. I couldn't find the language in Orcus's contract that I pulled up that reflects what you said was put in there by Craig. But even that, I wouldn't know the intricacies. But
We rewrote that.
I'll run that to
The arbitration procedure together.
Yeah, I'll run that to ground with the local there and our attorney that assisted with that. But I mean, I don't see, and when I negotiate, I look at things like, what's the problem? What was the issue with it? How was that issue, you know, how does the changes being proposed address that particular issue? And to me, this kind of goes beyond and above. I mean, I haven't heard, certainly, maybe the chief could give us some light on this particular issue, or maybe Ms. Carrero, but I mean, I have some questions that I would like answered before we could actually reply to this in earnest. I mean, you guys.
We'd be happy to look over it, caucus. We'd be happy to answer questions. It may require that I get more information from my team. And
Okay, but I mean, I would like an explanation.
Yeah, we're willing to do that, and our intention is to make the process quicker, better for both parties.
I think the quickness was just because of the arbitrator. And I mean, the 30-day deal, you could try that. But I know arbitrators that will call and ask, and you probably have the same thing. Yeah, I need an extension, maybe 2 weeks, 30-day, or 2 weeks, and then in 2 weeks, they call another 2 weeks. I've had long awards, I guess is what is up. The only time that there's really a pressing issue, in my opinion, is when somebody's job is at stake and the city may have to pay that, you know, the back pay in a reinstatement. But I've had those go a year and a half sometimes. before we even get to a hearing, because of, especially recently with the backup of COVID and stuff, but, we'll certainly take a look at it, but I do have those questions of what's the issue? Why, I mean,
So, and the intention is to make the process better for everybody, so that we have an understanding of what the contract means and what the contract says, especially when there's two understandings of it. And that's when we wind up in this procedure.
but there's
Also-
always two understandings when you file a grievance, because the grievance process, just like a court procedure, is when two people or two entities or two parties can't agree on what it means. And so, poof, you're in a grievance. So you give it to the third-party administrator, hearing examiner, commission, whatever, and they hear the evidence. You have your day in court or 2 days in court, so like next week I'll be in 4 days in court, and you explain what your side is, you sell that to
Right.
your independent hearing examiner. That person then is charged with taking the transcripts, taking their notes if they're doing a good job. And that's our responsibility as advocates, is to go through and strike the names of the people that are there and know where we're going with, and who we're selecting. I think something like the change that the change that you're asking for, well, there's not a lot of substantive change. There's enough there for me to give pause and look at it and say, well, why? And that's why, I mean, if it's the length of time that this 8 months or 10 months took to get this award, that was not part of this contract's issue or any of the grievances process. That was all on the arbitrator's shoulders. And I think if we can try it, we can try putting a time limit in there, but we'll look at the rest of the stuff, we'll consider it, we'll compare it, and we'll get you a counter or
Sure.
response, but,
And take
there may be
into
more questions.
consideration the items that we're talking about, because that's the purpose of sitting at this table and trying to make this contract better than it was, trying to make the procedure or fine tune it. And if we can address problems that are foreseeable, because we don't control the arbitrators, but we can through our provision and what the authority is and what we can do with regard to them going outside the authority, it protects both parties. And that's what we're just looking to tie up.
Well, in the award, I didn't see anything outside the provision.
No, I didn't think that award, I didn't, I'm not the attorney on that, but when I looked at it, I knew that there was a length of time issue, and then in me just trying to understand the underlying issue and what has to
What
be
length of
talked
time?
about. Huh?
What length of time?
The length of time that the award took to be
Oh,
issued.
yeah.
That's what it is, and there was no mechanism in the procedure to help us with that. We had nothing other than contacting her, contacting the arbitrator and not receiving a response.
I had the same thing, and mine was on a disciplinary hearing with this, same. I represent my, what do you call them, my brothers and sisters, clients. That's my job, is to make sure that I know when I select somebody, this is what I expect, or this, and then I could certainly, and I would, say, hey, can we get it a little sooner than 6 months? Ours was 6 months, and it was a disciplinary. So, but yeah, I understand. And you guys have any questions on the grievance process?
Just put,
The
you're up in there,
arbitration proceeding.
the word properly submitted, can you clarify what you mean by that?
So properly submitted, there is language in here as to what, let's see, this is the grievance, we gotta go back to the grievance.
Yeah, oh, it's 30,
Properly, yes.
submitted.
So there's, in the grievance article,
Would those, the initial one, step one, would that be factoring into here? Again, would you need to have some kind of formal writing where it's reported to the
Chain of command.
the chain of command, and if it wasn't reported to the chain of command directly to the unit president, or we attempted to address it to the fire chief, would that automatically take away from being able to take it to arbitration?
That's not the intention.
Okay, then-
No, the intention is not to make that not properly submitted, no.
Okay.
That's a good question, but no, that's not meant to do that. When we're talking about properly submitted grievance, it's something that is grievable, not something that's not grievable, you know?
That's not
And
very-
there's I think that there is already a definition, and I have to look through here, that describes what is grievable and what is subject to the grievance procedure, and then the arbitration, and then which can go to arbitration. Here, it starts off with the grievance procedure, 37.1. The city and the association declare and agree that the purpose of this grievance procedure is to provide a just and equitable method for resolving disagreements between the parties regarding the interpretation of the provisions of this agreement. Only matters involving the interpretation, application, or alleged violation of a specific provision of this collective bargaining agreement shall be subject to this grievance procedure. So that identifies, that first paragraph in 37.1 out of the grievance procedure identifies what is a proper grievance. And what is a properly submitted grievance, and you have to go through the grievance procedure, and then we wind up at the arbitration procedure. So yes, that is a good point. No, the chain of command deal is not meant to frustrate or make the process harder in any way. It's meant to maybe make the process go quicker in certain circumstances. I know that there's going to be certain circumstances where the grievance will not get resolved or can't get resolved at that level when we go through the process. Yes, that's what proper means, is what the definition of that grievance, what falls under the grievance procedure. That's what that properly,
Now, on the first bullet point under R, the arbitrator exceeded his or her authority, this is effective award and appeal.
yes.
That the arbitrator exceed his or her authority as provided under this agreement, that's one of the instances where it might be appealable. But isn't it already gonna be, that depends on a point of view or an opinion from your side, because as it is, when we're going into the grievance procedure, like Ralph stated, we're already at, where we can't come to an agreement of the interpretation of the material. So if the arbitration ruling comes down and says, well, no, that ruling is opposed to, they added to the contract because it was specifically stated in this grievance procedure, in this award, because of past practices and what was in the contract, that's where they got on to where that, you're adding to the language of the contract when it wasn't, it was already included in the past practice and making standards.
Sure, no, and that's, so a grievance or an arbitrator's award is meant to provide an interpretation and explanation what a provision means. When we're saying exceeds the scope as provided, the arbitrator's authority is identified in 38.1D. It says all they can do is tell us how the interpretation and how the application, how you apply those terms of the agreement. It can't say that, well, because they've already been doing this, now the city or the union is not obligated to do this additional thing, even though it was not specified in here. That's different from an interpretation. So they can't modify the agreement, they can't split the baby, or so to say, if there's something there, an arbitrator could possibly say, well, you're right and you're right, or you're both wrong, so I'm gonna split the baby, even though that's not what the contract says. That's something that goes outside the scope. We're not asking for that. We're asking, can you just tell us what this provision means so that we can follow it? And that's it. So, and we can, if there's better language to help explain that, we'd be happy to consider it.
So we're gonna come up with a proposal if need be.
Okay. I know that was a lot, so these are the two proposals that we have for today. We wanted to follow up on our request to be able to do the rest of our proposals at the next session, which would be,
Didn't you mention that you have 29 also?
no, we don't have 29. What I mentioned was that at the last meeting, you stated that there were no changes, and I was visiting with HR to prepare a proposal, and 29 was one of the ones that we needed an extra day for, or an extra session for. So we're looking for the time to come back with 16, 26, 29, 32, and then possibly a new article.
What would the issue be covered in the new article?
I'm still talking to my team about that. It was something that I need to talk to them about, so I don't know if it's going to be presented quite yet or not.
We understand the city's lack of additional resources so we are willing to hear beyond this for a new proposal, but also maybe limited to exactly what issue, why, or idea of how to resolve it, not actually put it on paper, just still give us an idea of what you're looking at or what is being done, because, I mean, I think we've been fair enough. This is the fourth one. The last one was canceled. I understand at the last minute, but still we were advised. So I think we've been forthcoming, we've been open with what we've done. But to kind of expedite the process of this, can we get an idea exactly of what's going to be touched on and what's not? Or is it just that's still all up in the air and?
No, I can tell you, I can go over some of the stuff. It's not, let me make sure I have my full list. So, and I want to make sure, I have all my notes, I want to make sure that we have touched all the articles. And we're identifying the ones that we are proposing changes on. So Article 16, we are looking at, the costs and the possibility of restructuring some of the ad pays in a way that would help the city budget and address anticipated climbing costs and the sustainability for the ad pays in the department. That's one of the things that we're running costs on, just to look at that. That's what we're looking at that. So that's what we're working on. So it may be a small restructuring that we may propose.
Is this going to have a time frame, or is this encompassing the life of the contract?
We don't, that's what we're trying to figure out. So we're trying to figure out a structure, and I don't have, without the finalization of the numbers, I don't have the answer, but we're looking to, we're not looking to take away, we're looking to restructure, make sure that we can have the proper funding and budget for it, and make sure that it remains sustainable.
So isn't this all dependent on Article?
15, the annual base pay? Yes, absolutely.
So.
And so we're looking, we have to look at that in conjunction with the annual base pay, and then, of course, we're having all the other economic proposals that have been placed on the table, or the proposals that have some sort of economic aspect to it, to make sure that we address, consider the proposals, address it, look at what can be done, and that way we can come up with our proposals and counter proposals. But we do want to be able to have 16 be part of, that we can propose a change either in conjunction with 15 or on its own, or at least address it. Okay?
In my opinion, I think we need to negotiate hand in hand one with the other, because to address Article 15 prior, we need to be, you can't address 16 without addressing 15.
Right, and that's the crux that we're in, because at first we thought that the union was gonna put, a proposal on the table that we could work with in an economic, like a package, or just look at the entire economic part of it. And so when we found out that there was gonna be no changes, then that changed our, now we're gonna have to make sure that we place, if you agree to just let us place the article, say that we're gonna propose a change possibly in conjunction with Article 15, that we just need the time. We want to make sure that we can have the ability to propose a change if necessary. And that's what we're looking at and identifying while we're costing out Article 15 and the other economic articles.
You don't know exactly which percentage, or just call throughout Article 16?
I don't, we're looking at ways to restructure, and so that's why we need more time. I wish I had the article ready, but I don't, so. Otherwise we could keep talking about it. But that's why we need the additional time.
You said on,
So-
you said 26?
16. Article 26. We're looking at that one to see if there's any proposed changes that may have been implicated from the arbitration award. I don't know what the underlying issues were, and I can't tell from the actual award. I don't know what the event was, I don't know so I just need to get some info on
Yeah,
it.
just to make that clear, and maybe this will affect it. We know we can't use association business for political activities. That's not
Okay.
really encompassed to it. For any, that's been an agreement since this was first negotiated in 2014.
Okay,
So that's it, that was not intending this.
okay,
It was
and I just wanted to make clear on
It was
that.
specifically a community outreach project,
Sure,
where
You'll say,
I guess part of the denial, like I said, these gentlemen here were on the board, don't have more information, but if I'm not mistaken, it was a community outreach project where.
city sponsored
City
event.
city sponsored.
It wasn't political at all.
But because of other issues that were going on between individuals, the city deemed it, oh, that's a political event.
Okay.
When it was a city sponsored event. They asked for the association's assistance into that, because during that time, it was during COVID, and a lot of people you couldn't get anything.
right,
So where that turned into that, where we have the understanding and we follow an agreement that this does not come into effect in that award, because we know these
Okay.
rules.
well, I think that then the issue becomes, so it's the understanding that ABL is not used for political activity, correct? Because
Correct.
city paid hours or whatever it is. That's not clear in the contract, but I know that that's the understanding between the parties. The other thing that I think that we need to identify is to prevent a misunderstanding like this from happening, is maybe we need to work on the definition of political activities. And like you're saying, it sounds to me, and I don't know all the details, and I apologize, because I was not part of it, and I know it happened in, the arbitration was in November, and I think the event was even earlier that spring. So So I think that one of the reasons that we want to look at that is to identify, okay, let's talk about what are political activities, because it seems that there was a misunderstanding where there was designations and everybody was in disagreement. So that's one of the reasons I think that it's implicated and that we want to look at it and maybe propose a change in order to prevent future grievances. And that's why we're looking at that.
So I want to be specific for 26.3, which is where political activities are defined as, you have 1 to 5, no one be addition to that, or?
Yeah, and I just need to look at the entire article, because also I think that if it needs to be clear that the union and the city both agree that ABL is not used for political activity, that we need to either put that in the ABL article or the political activity article.
We did propose something.
We propose on.
Yes, you have the ABL proposal out that we're working on for the counter proposal. So that was
This is more
26.
just being open to making sure the understanding of what the political activity is, not so much that it has to change anything other than the fact that what's considered, let's say, it's gonna be limited to 26.3.
Right. Well, yeah, and I'm not gonna limit, what we're looking at is what the definition is, but if we need to add something in there that says ABL is not used for political activities, that may be in addition to it as well, so. Okay.
Before we proceed, can you take a pause?
Yep.
And the camera microphone is on.
All right, before we say anything, we're going to let you finish the part that we're going on. We're finished, speaking of on
26.
Article 26.
Right,
Next would be.
26.
Yes.
The other one that was discussed, and I think that we just need to make sure that there's clarity on. I don't know that there's any post changes, but in light of the arbitration award that mentioned and had Article 32 maintenance of standards as one of the provisions being touched on in that.
Before we go to 32, we want to talk about 29 first?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'd already checked it off. 29.
We can skip it.
No, well, 29. So we're doing Article 16, 26. I've already said that we're gonna be doing Article 29. We're looking at changes that need to be made with regard to the date, and we are evaluating whether there's any other changes that need to be made to that.
As pertaining to what?
We need to look at it, because the last, initially, the union had said that they were gonna provide a proposal on that, and at the end of the last, or at the last negotiation, you said that there was no changes on that.
Yeah, because we specified, and when we first brought it up, we let y'all know that it was gonna be dates, which we thought needed to be changed, but those are actually just for historical purposes that were left in there. You notice on 29.6, where it refers to even the date preceding this contract, 2014, 2016, 2017.
Yes.
This contract took effect till 2018. So that article itself, basically all of 29.6 was left in there for historical purposes of where it came from and how it got to this extent. It says here effective date, it doesn't limit to which date, ending date. So if there's another issue, like I said, that was our only proposed, or we thought had to be a proposed change into clarification on that. If the city has another issue, according to the numbers in there, we would like to know what the issue of those would be.
So in Article 29.6, we're going to clean it up a little bit and define it for y'all. It leaves a little bit of ambiguity as far as who's paying for what. So there's a section there that the city pays a portion of it, and once they get the age of 65, then at that point they go into what's called a medical supplemental plan program. So we're just gonna clean that up. There's also a portion on there where the fire dependent fund pays a portion of the retirees' dependents, and then the retiree pays the 160.16 on their coverages. So we're just gonna clean that up, that language on that one.
Are you proposing adjustment of the actual pay of it, or what exactly is it?
We're gonna cost out of some of the numbers. Our medical plan, as you are aware, goes up every year. And it's, I guess, up for discussion to see where we wanna go with it, if y'all wanna consider something differently right now.
Okay.
So,
Just, I guess, for clarification, do we know where that fund is standing at currently?
yeah, it's right now at a healthy amount.
But I guess I haven't seen it. Do we have a number amount of this?
I think you get
We have.
is a quarter, oh, you haven't got it?
That's what we
Okay.
asked, because we was actually gonna ask in between, while caucusing, because we haven't gotten that, I believe, in the last year, maybe?
Yeah, probably a year.
Okay, that's, I just got it like maybe about at the beginning of August, and it's healthy, so right now what's gonna happen is those our premium rates are gonna be changing here. So what happens is, since the fund pays more of your dependent coverage, at some point, it's gonna even out and maybe exceed that cost. So there might be a point that we need to come back and talk about it. We can get you the rates, I don't mind, the last report at the beginning of August. And the fund is pretty healthy right now, the dependent companies. Looks good. But that's what we're wanting to do, is just clean it up a little bit, and exactly what you said, the section, the paragraphs that are behind there, it's not relevant to this contract anymore. So it might be some strikeouts just to say this is not relevant anymore and it needs to be cleaned up. And I think that's pretty much it. We're covering the dental, we're doing the medical health plan, that's the contract that's stipulated.
Yes.
The life insurance is in place. The accidental death and dismemberment is also in place. So it's just mainly in the medical portion and the retiree portion that we just want to clean it up.
Okay.
And just let you know that once the retiree hits 65, it goes into another program. We're just saying what the dependent health fund pays and what the retiree pays. And that's probably what we're going to clean up.
Because, and Japa might be more fluent in this. Where,
29.6, I guess what it talks about, they're paying it in full, because when we came to the end of the 2014 to 2018 contract, there was still a little bit of money that wasn't fully, I guess, covered yet, and that's why those dates were left in there, the ones on the second page of that paragraph.
As of today, it's already.
Yeah, so no, we've exceeded it now. We've exceeded it now.
Right.
We fixed the issue with increasing what was going into the fund.
Your fund is good, however, then the more retirees that go into that dependent fund, that dependent fund is gonna pay a higher amount. So if you're looking at 30, so this is why we need to run some numbers. If you're gonna have 30 additional retirees that have dependents behind it. Right now, your fund is healthy. There's gonna be a point where it's gonna do this, and then you're not gonna have enough in that fund to cover it. So those are the numbers that we're moving to right now. And as Ms. Gervais said, we just finished budget, so we just need to go back and time those numbers. I'll be happy to share those numbers with you all, so you all can see what's happening with those numbers.
I believe, if I'm not saying it was a stipulation, like I said, I'm not exactly sure where or how it was negotiated, but any time where the funds get below a certain threshold,
Oh, yeah.
even if
It's
it's
a
in,
lesson.
even if it's in between the contracts, that's what I'm saying. Like right now, we understand we want to touch on it just to make sure, but if it's not actually getting depleted, it doesn't have to immediately get addressed, because we know the fact that it can come in between the contract where the city comes back, hey, the fund is getting a little bit on the low side for whatever X amount of reasons, either increasing rates or decreasing in the membership, which has recently happened.
Sure, so what I'm hearing that the changes will be proposed are mainly just cleanup and clarification, and then just getting an overall update of where the health of the fund is, and then that way we can at least anticipate if and when during the term of this next contract that it'll need to be addressed. And I think that's beneficial to everybody.
Yes.
Agreed. That understand. That's fine. Good.
Okay. Uh, 32 again, that one is probably just another clarification or possible, just cleanup language. I know it was subject of the arbitration, that the one that the award just came out for. And it was discussed, but I'd actually like to discuss with the city team as well as the union with regard to the understanding. And we did discuss right now with the maintenance of standards was that it was related to the terms of the contract, but maybe propose some easier language, so or some clarifying language or something to really put the intent in there. That way, when an issue does come up, it's clear what the maintenance of standards does mean and what it does encompass. So that's what we're just looking at, some clarifying language.
So you're not saying that the award somehow required the city to do something?
It did not. I think when I read the award, if I recall, that
There's
there was
insufficient evidence to support a finding.
right, that there
the
wasn't
city
any
violated.
finding with regard to the maintenance of standard, but it does appear that there was an issue that was brought up, and I think that since we're talking at the table right now, that it is imperative that we talk about what the maintenance of standard means, and if there's a way that we can make it easier for people to understand what the intent is, that we can propose that we're going to propose something like that, or at least have a discussion about it.
The discussion on that part is gonna be, I guess, a little bit more direct and limited towards the fire chief, because his interpretation of whatever is in this contract or what was done in the past to what he can do now, pertaining again to this memo where he thought he was in that right, where our opinion is no, chief, you're in violation, they're target them to.
Okay, and I need to discuss that with the chief and my team, and that way we can, and we need to look back. We just got the award, I got it yesterday afternoon, and I'd like to look at the history of it, and maybe we could provide an education to everybody about what the maintenance standard means, how it was negotiated, what the intention was, and to that way, if everybody understands, it could prevent a future grievance if we have it on the record and a little bit more clear about what it encompasses.
The grievance was.
Article 16, Article 26, Article 29. Article 32, we presented Article 37 today, and we proposed a counter proposal for Article 38. And then we have a possible new article, and that one, we're looking at a nepotism issue. And so that's a new article that we're looking at proposing. We're working on that, and I have to work with the management and my team, and it's something that just came about, I think. So we're working on that, and we want the opportunity to be able to place that on the table.
That's gonna be addressing what issue, do we know?
I need to find that out for my team. But I believe that somebody has proposed it, and it's to prevent conflict of interest issues and nepotism with regard to hiring or promotions or things like that. And I don't know all the details on the issue, and I need to, but it has been brought to my attention by my team, and I need to be able to discuss that further.
All right, we're willing to listen to that to make sure
And again-
there's no future possible for, upcoming complications because of an article like that.
Right, and it's up for discussion, and just remember that the reason that we're here is in good faith to discuss and negotiate. We'd like to be able to place articles on the table to negotiate the items, as was the intent that was sent over by the union, in good faith. So, we're hoping that we were able to do that and, hopefully come to an agreement. And, even though, just as each party puts proposals on the table, there's things that we may not agree to or things that we will agree to. So that's just the nature of this negotiation. And, we just want the ability to be able to place our items on the table and negotiate on them in good faith and be heard.
Trying to follow up on that, on negotiating and good faith and the purpose of why we're here. Referring back to Article 16, we do feel we've given, ample amount of time, coming down to have at least, not limiting, but at least a more focused, instead of saying what part of this article and why is it, specifically being addressed now as opposed to later, as opposed to before.
But one of the issues there was that we received notice at the last session that we were expecting a proposal from the union since the beginning. When we went over, that was one of the items that the union said that you were gonna put a proposal on. So when we got notice, it was at the eve of the budget workshops and some people having COVID that were essential to helping work on that. And so that was one of the challenges, and as I explained, and so we were expecting to be able to look at that article on a counter proposal from you. So that's one of the reasons. Otherwise, we would have been working on it at the, we were waiting for a proposal so we could work on a counter proposal. And that's the other reason for asking to be able to work on this.
That's what I'm saying, we're open to hearing it, but what exactly is it gonna be addressed? Because this infers to a lot of different things or a lot of different specifications. The city knows exactly what this encompasses when it refers to Article 15 and how much it actually.
Right, and that's because Article 15 is more straightforward. It's not just on the base wage, so that's a pretty straightforward issue. With Article 16, we're talking about different kinds of ad pays, which include education benefits, certificate pay, assignment pays. What we're doing is we're looking at the costing of the pays. All of these pays are, well, there's some that are flat rate pays and some that are percentage rate pays. And those percentage rate pays are a percentage of the base salary. And that percentage of the base salary, as I understand it, also applies to overtime pay, which, we don't have control of. Overtime is gonna happen as it needs to fulfill the operations and the duties, or to fulfill the operations of the department and have all the duties filled. So we're looking at that. Again, the intention is not to look, we're trying to figure out, understand what the cost is of this, because this does tend to be a large cost as it's a percentage of the base pay. For instance, there's one particular ad pay that is 10%, actually three separate ad pays that I see that are 10% of the base pay and things like that. And the intention here is not to take away, but just to evaluate and see if there's an ability to restructure somehow this system or this ad pay where it is easier to anticipate the funding and the budget needed including in terms of overtime and the anticipated overtime and I need my budget people to run calculations on the anticipated overtime with the retirees that are expected, the cadets that are coming in, when they're being turned out, things like that. So that's what we're looking for.
And that's what I'm going back to, is this, maybe proposed language gonna be an throughout the life of the contract, or are you trying to address, because I keep on hearing the overtime issue. The overtime issue is now we're being brought to the table, we're negotiating good faith, so you're telling us that the city's basically stance is we have to work with them because they short-staffed us to begin with.
No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that we have to do, that's a factor, and that's a factor in dealing with this, but we're also dealing with the overall cost, and we want to make sure that this is sustainable and we can continue this contract. So I don't know if what we need to do is run the numbers and see whether when we calculate something like this, whether it is, a year or a shorter term rather than the life of the contract, or figure out if there's some sort of, we're working on figuring out, okay, how can we structure this that benefits everybody? Because number one, we don't want to take away, and we're not. What we want to do is try to make sure that we can ensure that these ad pays, that we can sustain them and keep paying them, that we can fund them, that they're budgeted correctly, and that
Maybe with 10 and then another 10 and another 10, is that what you think it is, or?
Just.
No.
Just to have some
As a reminder,
clarification.
we only have 2 add-on pays.
Yeah.
We're limited to 2 add-on pays.
Yeah.
Okay,
So the max is, 20% would be like the master certification
right.
and the paramedic, and that would be at 20%, and that's it.
Okay, and we need to run the calculations on that, and we need to understand the costs that way, and it may be that, I need Jesus to run the costs and the calculations, and we need to just figure it out, and that's what, we just want to be able to put a proposal on the table and have a discussion on it.
So, and that's what I'm saying, like,
I think on our end, it's just, I guess we brought this up the last meeting, right? But I think it's been almost a month. So I guess we're kind of in good faith. We want to get this done as quickly as possible. We see the finish line kind of coming
Right.
up, and we want to have all this process as expedited as possible,
Right,
as
we will.
thorough, but as efficient as we can be. And I think, on our end, we kind of already, given all of our proposals, but even.
I was gonna
done
ask,
our-
I didn't know, the union had stated that they were gonna do the, Article 6, the rights of management. Are y'all still gonna do a proposal on that?
No, not that we finalized the proposal.
yeah,
on
we
that one.
never finalized anything on that, so that's gonna go beyond the allowed time, so.
Well, and the ground rule says that the goal is, I think that the goal here is to be able to bargain in good faith on the items that are the conditions of employment and the wages. And so, in order to do that, we just need, and we've asked, and I'll point blank, that when we had the last bargaining session, we were going into the budget issues and the budget workshops. And the budget department is working on a very short staff. And so they were dealing with that. And then we were supposed to have a meeting last week, which is never, I don't believe it was ever, we talked about it, but I don't think that it was actually confirmed to be set. And I myself had a personal item that came up. So other than that, that's just the way things happen. And there's nothing but good faith intentions here, and in trying to make sure that when we're dealing with the pay, which is extremely important to the firefighters and the city, that we get it right and then we completely understand it. And so that's why we're asking for that. What we had expected was that we would get not only the base pay article, but we had expected the Article 16 based on what the union had told us, so we were going to be able to evaluate that as a counter proposal. And so that shifted at the last meeting, but we did have, and we had those factors to do with our end. So we just want to be able to properly do that.
So
I mean, are you considering not allowing us to do that? Because it is already after 5 o'clock on the fourth day.
Yeah, my understanding is that, from what I'm hearing from you, is come next meeting, we're gonna be able to negotiate Article 15, which in play will negotiate Article 16, because you can't negotiate Article 16 without knowing what 15 is gonna be defined.
Right,
Because, I mean, it's a percentage pay.
right,
So
that's
it's gonna
absolutely
be a
right.
constantly shifting, so we can't touch this at all if we don't have this set. If we don't have this set by next meeting, this no longer comes into play at all,
Which one?
Article 16. You know what I'm
So-
saying? If 15 is agreed to upon by the next meeting, Article 16 is allowed to be negotiated.
I don't
If-
believe that,
Because if Article 15, you're still not gonna know how much Article 16 is gonna cost you if we haven't gotten the numbers on the actual pay. I mean,
right,
if-
and we're working on that, and that's why we're saying that I don't think that there's a requirement that we agree to 15 until we have we want to place 16 on the table and discuss that and work with it in conjunction with 15, because you're right, the base pay is
all
the
control.
standard and the controlling, because the ad pays are a percentage of that. So it's important on that, and we need to take that into consideration when we're doing counter proposals and negotiating in that, and we don't want to leave 16 out, because that's a critical part of the monetary and the economic evaluation.
Well, it is a critical part, and every article that we put on the table is critical. Both sides have the responsibility of finding out what they need to do, what they're gonna look at, and putting that on the table. We have come to the table every time prepared. I understand the constraints with the city. When was it that we gave the pay proposal, number 15? Was that in the end of July? So I'm gonna take a wild guess and say you've had at least 20 days, the city has, to formulate some sort of applicable change to Article 16 to put it out there. Now, I don't want to belabor this anymore. Ground rules, as we know from Corpus's fiasco with their city manager taking it to court, they don't really have any kind of legal standing. It's just the agreement and the relationship building component of what I think is important at the contract negotiations. Like the statute says, we can present anything we need to.
Right.
We'll present them, we'll look at them, but we don't have to agree to anything. So we understand your concerns. We wanted some more specifics. And, these guys, I watched them, and I participated in the preparation for this. They looked at each of these articles stringently to see what they wanted to do and what they wanted to bring forward. I was hoping that the city was doing that, and I understand the short staffing. But in reality, negotiations, the intent to negotiate started in May, if I'm correct, because I remember being copied on it from Carlos. But, I mean, we're not trying to do a bad faith thing here, or, hold you guys accountable for anything. They just, they're just looking for a reprieve. And I understand that, this has been a long going process. The intent was, and that was part of the fiasco of, us not getting notified last week. It wasn't that bad. I mean, I ended up being in Texas City the next day. But, we planned these dates, 2 dates, all the way out till, I think, maybe it wasn't this far out, but it was at least the 17th, 18th. And that's what we had. So, but, I don't know what we need to do to get that done. If you guys, the guys would like some sort of written proposal. If you have some sort of ability to put something in writing.
I don't have the authority or the ability to do that today, and my budget person had to go home today.
Yeah, but he's had it for 20 days, at least 20 days.
He's had it for 20 days, but he's also had the budget workshops, the city budget, and a lot of other things, and he's not the only, there's a lot of moving parts to the city side, to costing out every one of these things and evaluating it, and it's not an easy it's not an easy task. I can't do it myself. I'm not a numbers person, I'm not a budget person. And I also have to, I'm the representative of the city, so I have to have the full authority to be able to put something together and have it run. And we're not sitting idly, but we will have that prepared, our final proposals prepared for the next session. And so I want to reiterate that we have been working hard on our side. There's a lot of costing, a lot of moving parts involved. And I appreciate the time that you're putting in, but we have also been putting in a lot of time on our end, and there are just some final issues that we need to tie up before I have the authority to actually put something in writing on the table. But that's our intention. And those are just the factors that we're dealing with.
Defer to the team.
Like I say, I'm having trouble, I guess, wrapping my head around how we're gonna negotiate the 16 without knowing the actual cost, because cost is gonna be Article 15.
So, and I understand that. I just want the opportunity to be able to put a proposal down for 16 while we're working on 15. I don't want to lose that opportunity for the city. And that's where our issue is, because if you're saying that we can't get to 60 until 15, then how am I ever going to be able to do a proposal within, the goal that we had anticipated? So I just wanted that opportunity, but I understand you're absolutely right. 15 is directly related to 16, and it has to be looked at together, because then 16 is meaningless.
Well, together, I'll tell you what my not worry so much, but my concern would be, is that we end up next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever, we get 16 on the table, and you guys in the city, and this is just hypothetical, nothing, I'm not accusing you, but it's a concern. And then it's linked to, well, if you don't take this, we're not going, and you may not say this, but if you don't take this, then we're not going to do this in pay. And, it doesn't seem fair. You've had as much time as we have, and with ground rules, that's important, because that time period that you're given, each side is given to present proposals, is always important, and it creates an environment of trust.
Right.
So right now, what I guess, and I'll say it, the trust factor is slipping away because, just things that are happening, and it may be beyond our control.
So
And I don't know what to do.
Are you saying that the city's doing something that's untrustworthy on our side?
No, it's a hypothetical. Things that, whatever you do, is always you're building on a relationship.
Right.
And you're building that trust. So, seems unfair that we've been prepared, we've had to work hard to get that there. And I understand that we're not the only department the city works with, and we understand the issues of individuals leaving, but this is a priority to us. And in the beginning, we heard that this was a priority to the city as well. And I've been doing this way too long to know how things go. And I've been here in the city of Laredo in the past. And it's kind of, it kind of happens this way all the time, to an extent. There's always a sticking point, and the city, it doesn't have everything that they need, and there's always an issue. But, the way I look at it, from the outside looking in, and these guys have not said anything to me about it, but there's hesitancy on our side, I think, because of that hypothetical scenario I gave you, where, we're going to be held to that proposal, and everything else is going to be around it.
Well, Are you saying it's unfair that we're gonna negotiate?
No, it's
Because
unfair
isn't that the
that,
part of, isn't that the part of negotiation?
yeah, but it's
That
not,
we discuss these items and we take them all because this is, tentative agreements are tentative until we agree to an entire contract.
yeah, but it's unfair that the city if this issue is so important to the city, it's unfair that the city relied on this union proposing an article of change, and then they didn't. The city should have had the due diligence to have their proposal due. You had your other proposals
So-
ready, just not that one.
We have, and the item is, when it comes down to these large economic proposals, which have a large price tag to them, and different costing factors, it can tend to be complex. We're the ones that are, and we're the ones that are costing those out, and we want to make sure that they're accurate and we have all the proper data.
Right.
So when something like Article 16, which is a percentage of a base wage, and we were expecting a proposal from the union because that was what was indicated at the beginning, the costing for that tends to be very different. So and it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time and a lot of resources from the city. So rather than expend resources and the limited resources we have currently and the time from the city from costing something when we were already expecting something like, okay, well, let's see what they're at and let's work off of that. And then we could cost that. That shifted when on the last meeting you indicated, well, we actually have none. So now we have to start from the other side and say, okay, well, we were going to work with what the city, what the union had proposed and costed it from there. Where are we going to go from there? So it just,
But you understand our point of view.
I do.
We
And I
had a
hope-
proposal, and we didn't present it because, so now that, in our opinion, that section of the contract is done with for us. If the city needed that worked in there, they should have had some sort of language or proposal. If the ground rules mean anything, the fourth meeting was last week.
I
It got-
thought,
it got proposed to this
that
week.
actually, when you're talking about trust, I thought we were working on this together. So at the last second, when you're saying, okay, all of a sudden, even though we told you this, now we don't have it, that puts us, that also doesn't.
Right, it makes you feel.
And so that's the issue here, and that's not, I don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go down that road. And so what we're
I agree.
asking is, we need one more session to get all our stuff crunched, put this together, and be able to place the items that the city needs to place on the table for good faith negotiations. And that's what we're asking. And we've been asking since this morning, and here we are, at the end of the day, past 5. I don't even know what time it is.
5:30. I think
5:30, and so, it just seems that the time that the city could have been utilizing, if you weren't gonna, if you were gonna give us a hard time about it, that we could already been utilizing it all day.
I think the Article 16, we brought it up last meeting, but I think if we maybe go back and look at the record, I think it's something that the prior meeting to that was something that we had mentioned that we weren't going to touch.
It's been a while, but
It's been a while.
that's regardless, we're here today, we're at this point, and, we need to make a decision whether we want to agree to that or not, and, that has consequences itself, to the process.
So am I hearing at 5:30 on the fourth meeting that y'all are not gonna let us put any new proposals out, or what am I hearing?
We take a quick caucus? About 5 minutes.
And it's recorded.
We're coming back, we talked it over about, basically what we were talking about before the caucus. We understand we want to also bargain in good faith, negotiate in good faith. We understand the constraints that the city's had, with short staffing. we also understand the time we've given, time we've been prepared. So are we gonna be sticklers about it and hold, your feet to the fire we would like some requests concerning this. One of them being the setup of the next meeting and kind of hold steadfast on it. In order not to kind of just dismiss it and keep on pushing it and pushing it and pushing it. So if we can see it in meetings possibly next week, and then we can talk about that this time. One issue, or well, we can just our request. Also because of the fact that we're on time constraints, and that's kind of where we're coming from also, because we have issues that we need to be addressed. If we can talk about, if we can address, besides Article 16, we know that, but we also have the article concerning the pension, where we need to address, and that's on a time frame also, because we need to make a movement on that.
Yes, next pension board.
Tomorrow. And we moved it because we thought we were gonna meet last week and twice this week, which was yesterday and today. That was on the video.
Voting is it some of the discussion points that John brought up in the last article discussions that John talked to us about? Is that what it is?
Our ballot is kind of hanging on the contingency of this.
We need
So what
to
is discussed
vote on
here,
it to have
so-
enough time for whatever the membership votes. We can implement those changes. The actuary can change their formulas of the gentleman's, I don't know if you guys, retiring in December.
Your agenda's posted, right?
Yes. It's almost supposed to set a date for voting.
And like I said, I think we've been fair on the, allowing the time, scheduling the meetings. The fact that we can prepare the cities, we've understood. But now, like I say, it is a time crunch on ours, so besides Article 16 is the article, you said 30, Chaplain?
30 is a retirement article.
Yeah, the retirement article, which we did do a proposal for, which you have. And beyond that, also to be able to touch on Article 15, which would be the pay raises, and hopefully that will be coming up on the next meeting.
Yes, our intent is to get all of our articles on there. We're costing out all of the articles that you could place that have the economic perspective, or economic impact to the contract, in terms of new money, because there's a lot of articles that have changes that require new money to be, funded to the contract. So we're looking at that, and you have to remember that when we're looking at the economic impact, we have to look at the economic impact as a whole, so we do have to consider all of that. And we will be looking at that and working on counter proposals. Like I said, in order to work on 16, we have to work on 15. So that's one of the priorities that we're looking at. We know that's a big issue and a big issue that we need to talk about, so we're working on that. When you're talking about the setup of the meetings, what do you mean? Or just having them set?
Having them set
Okay.
and then holding strong to those dates. because
Yes,
like I say,
and I,
we're on time constraints now also, and I understand the city was on time constraints because of the budget. The budget hearing, the budget workshops, and the fact that the budget was already approved. So we're on that similar boat where we need to get this resolved. We have been, in contact since May. We have been proposing things, all the last proposals we had since basically at least 3 weeks. We kind of need to get the ball rolling.
yeah, and we have placed proposals on the table, and we have the final ones that I listed that we're going to propose. We're working on counter proposals, and like I said, we should have a lot of the work, a lot of the economic work and costing done. Of course, you have to remember that when we come to the table, we're going to have to make sure that we have the authority from the city, from the city as a whole.
So concerning the authority, if it goes beyond this and we still don't have the authority to nail something down, does that mean the article goes away, or?
No, and I want to make sure that so I'm not a decision maker. Each individual person here is not a decision maker. We have to make sure that I have the authority on behalf of the city as the representative of the city to be able to place an article on the table. And that's what, when we put something on, it's something that we're gonna stand by and negotiate on. So that's what I'm, when I'm talking about authority, that's what I'm talking about. The ultimate authority on this contract is, of course, gonna be the city council, and they will approve the contract,
We're not,
once,
we're not.
or not, or they could not. So, my intent is to negotiate a contract, have both parties vote on it and get it approved. So we will, we need to set the meetings. I don't know, I need to have, of course, the critical part of my team for economics, make sure that he can be here for next week. So one of the things that happened is that we were not communicating with confirming the meeting, because I think on the last time we had discussed tentative dates, and and I just don't think that there was any communication to finalize them. And so we need to commit to do that, and I will commit to do that, and sending out emails, phone calls, and I want a commitment from you as well, so that we can make sure to set that. So we can, I have a hearing in the morning, but we can get on the phone in the afternoon and start getting the calendar dates, or if we can send emails. I know I'm not available on September 1st, but I also need to confirm with my team to make sure that we can, number one, have the time, because if we meet on Monday, I don't know that gives us enough time to crunch all the numbers that we have to and get everything prepared. But I also don't want to wait too long, so that we can at least have everything ready and move forward and start doing more counter proposals.
Unless,
And do you think that would be something we can achieve this afternoon before we finish this meeting, we conclude this meeting?
So
Trying to get in contact with our respective.
One of my team members went home ill, and so I don't know that I'll be able to get that today. And then one is on a plane and unavailable right now. So I just don't have the ability to communicate with them here in the next hour or so. And so, but I will be able to communicate with them in the morning and tomorrow, and we can set something so that we can set a schedule. I think I'd already sent an email out asking for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, we responded, the association
Right.
responded.
And so I will use that. We'll use that because we're looking for the dates, and we can set a schedule. And we can set a schedule and we can post them so that they're all posted at the same time. We can work on that. So.
and this is the last request. I mean, since we're allotting and going above and beyond the threshold that was kind of agreed to, now, are we allowed to be able to contact our councilmen and talk to them if they want to talk about specifics in this contract? Not negotiate with them, that's not our intent, but to be able to talk about that, because, like I say,
So the only part of that I was asking for was the ability to put our proposals out to, and that was, as I said, it was the goal that the fourth meeting that we have all our initial proposals out. But now you're saying that you want to talk to the city council members?
not to circumvent the negotiations, because I think we've made really good progress through here. But like I say, we're already going beyond what the scope of the ground rules, what we had laid down.
Right, but that was for the initial proposals. We're still negotiating.
Yeah, but I'm saying. the
So if we're
ground rules are-
negotiating in good faith, we should be doing that here at the table without potential violations of.
That's not what they're talking about. They're looking at having their First Amendment rights to be able to talk to whoever they want to talk to, hampered down. And I know this for a fact, because when I did the same thing that they're in, I always talked to my city council. I wasn't negotiating, I was saying, hey, cut me a deal. We have a close relationship with our city council, Laredo does too, and to be hampered that way, I wouldn't. Anyhow, they're just asking the ability to just talk to city council, not negotiate, nothing else. All
talk to them
negotiations.
individually. Well, that's the thing, like chapter 174 sets forth, number one, that we have good faith negotiations that have to follow the state rules for open meetings, which is the Texas Open Meetings Act, right? Secondly, 174 also allows the city to designate its designating bargaining representative whereby the negotiations are gonna go through. The city has designated me as their lead negotiator in this team, and the union has their designated team, and we sit here at the table during an open meeting to discuss it through the designating bargaining representative. We represent the city council. And that is our client and or my client, that is the person or the entity that I represent under 174. So when you're going outside the designated bargaining team and outside the table, I don't understand how, I mean, that kind of frustrates the good faith bargaining
Well,
process.
we're not arguing that we want to negotiate with them, we just want to talk to them.
So what's
So-
the
so for the
difference,
last-
where's the line?
So-
Where's the line
so
there?
since
If
the-
we're talking about staffing, wages, conditions of employment, benefits here at the table, and then you're having side conversations with the city council, where does that line, where's that line drawn?
It's drawn through the bargaining process. There's nothing in the statute that says that talking to anyone is prohibited, much less city council.
Well, we're not
So-
prohibiting talking to council at all. We're talking, what we have agreed, and part of the ground rules was that we were both gonna be good faith bargainers and discuss the matters at the table
And we
in
have
an
been
open
in good
meeting.
faith.
Mhm.
They've been doing it in good faith.
And so has the city.
And the original issue I had brought up with the city council member before we agreed to anything was the process of how this is gonna play out. The fact of, in the past, the previous negotiations were kind of dragged and dragged and dragged. Now, I'm not saying that that's the case here, but they did say, hey, push the dates, keep working, keep on it. The thing about it is that we've gotten to a point where from the outside in, it looks like it's dragged.
Well,
So-
and let me just interrupt just a little bit. So the issue is just to talk to them. Right now, the way I understand it is, city elections are coming up in November. This has been drawn out for a while. They have to talk to their city officials that they are endorsing, because under Texas Local Government Code 150, they're allowed to participate in political action.
Nobody
That-
said, none of this has anything to do with that.
Right.
What we're talking about
So, but
are
when
the
they're with
subject
them, though-
matters of the negotiations here at the table.
Right, and they're saying, if we're gonna trust you on the one more meeting, they're asking you to trust them on, let us talk to these people, because that is part of
So-
their goal as an organization, is to endorse and talk to their political candidates. And that's what they're asking for now, because if we're finished by the end of end of September, going into October maybe, I don't know how long the process works for them and for the city, you're close to the end of it, and they need to be able to access that, period. And so that is, yes, it's not asked for negotiation, it's not asked to talk about substantive issues around here, it's because
And
the
that-
political season's here.
And we've talked about that in the ground rule. In
We talked about the
ground rules.
timeline too.
Right,
as well.
and the timeline, and we're still within the bargain, we're still bargaining, we're not an impasse, we're not anywhere near it.
Then I guess we're done with this is the fourth day, nothing was handed down. All those what I'm saying is, the ground rules can be mutually agreed to. They're
Right,
saying that they would do that, open it up, and give you guys another date to propose
in
something.
exchange for them being able to negotiate.
Well, and they're
with-
asking for,
with the council
they're asking
members?
for, yeah, for a courtesy.
For a courtesy
Yeah.
for them to go bargain with the.
No, see, you're taking it out of
Well,
context.
I'm
to
not
talk to.
understanding, because at first I heard that they can talk to the council members about the issues we're discussing here.
Nobody said the issues you were
Not-
talking
not-
Okay,
that was not-
and I think that was clear when we talked about the ground rules.
Because my thing is like this has to do a lot with the timing of this contract. These current council members, which is what is your clients, have the impression that they're gonna vote on this contract. By the way that the dates have drawn out, that's no longer, that's not no longer guaranteed. This might,
And so somebody has told you about this
I don't-
impression?
Huh?
Has somebody told you about this impression?
No,
or
but
where-
we've been meeting since May, and this is 3 months. Now, I understand the official 4 meetings didn't start till, July, but we've been at this, preparing for this, going through this since May, when we first met. The councilmen, like I said, before we signed our contract negotiation, our ground rules, had the understanding that this was gonna get done, and they were gonna be the ones voting on it.
Which council member was that?
I think it's
Yeah, pretty much all of them that we talked to. Because we went and let them know that we're currently in contract, we're gonna go into contract negotiation. They asked me, are we gonna be voting on this? I'm like, yes. Well, my term is at the end of, this coming year. I understand that, but by then, we should have it ironed out and good to go, and it can be explained to you. Now it's getting a lot closer to that time where we still don't have, the meat and potatoes of this article has still yet to be proposed, or still, we're trying to propose. So it's getting a lot closer to the date. September 11th is, shortly under 3 weeks away. So,
Right, and if you look at it, you remember it took 2 meetings to get the ground rules. So we had that. We had the meetings, the initial proposal, we're still in initial proposals pursuant to the ground rules. And we're still have time, and we're meeting, and we're negotiating. I mean, we've touched almost every single one of the contracts, and we've already even done tentative agreements to proposals that you have put on there, and a proposal that we put on there. I mean, I think that we've been doing a lot of work and moving forward. So when we talked about the ground rules and talking to the council, I thought it was abundantly clear that we weren't preventing you from talking to the council as a citizen or as in a political sense where you're gonna endorse them. But the understanding was that any discussion about the subject matters of bargaining that are on the table, which we've talked about all the articles, are not discussed with them. So if you're asking, can I talk to my council member about things other than what's on the bargaining table? I thought that should have been abundantly clear when we came to the ground rules.
Ground rules aren't clear on that. I saw the language.
But we discussed it thoroughly on the record to exactly what that was.
can I talk to them about the time frame of this? That's nothing specific on the actual what's being negotiated here, but like I say, I want to be able to.
So you still want to talk to a council member, even though we're their designated bargaining team? You still want to talk to them about some aspect of the bargaining?
I mean, you've been here in good faith.
How about we do this? If that's what you're saying, then they can talk to city council. Here.
But they can talk to city council.
We're not talking negotiations, we're not talking anything else. They can talk
Nothing
to.
nothing about negotiations, the things that we're required by
And
law.
you've talked to city council as their client, they're your client.
Just like you were able to talk to your members.
And notify them, hey, you can't talk about or you can't talk about negotiation things, right?
I'm not gonna tell you what I've talked to my
Well,
client, but
okay,
we're
so,
all on the
right.
same accord.
So, yeah, okay, so we're all on the same page. We're asking favor for favor, in essence. I mean, you don't have to agree to our favor, that's fine.
I don't understand how it's a favor, that, like, it was abundantly clear that you can talk to your council member, just not about
Well, it's
bargaining.
educating me, because I wasn't here during
Okay.
the 2 days for ground rules.
Right, and that's what I was saying. We
Yeah,
can
and 2
take
days for ground
2
rules
days
is
for
kind of
ground rules.
long, because, and I'm sure it was centered around here, and I don't want to get into all of that, but that said, this is what they're asking. They're asking permission to exercise their First Amendment right and talk to
And that-
city council people, not about negotiation proposals and stuff like that, but just talk to them in the performance of political action under Texas Local Government Code 150.
Right, and
Aren't
if you
you
look at the
doing- aren't
record,
you-
that was clear.
Aren't you doing the same thing that you said you were afraid we would do? Would say,
No.
yeah, you can have this, but you have this, but you've got to take both or else you can't have one? So you say, yeah, we'll give you a
No,
favor,
not
we'll
really.
give you that? Sure seems like it.
No, ground rules aren't legally binding by
That
anybody.
doesn't matter.
So
We're not talking about ground
So
rules.
we're asking for favors. We're asking for an augmentation of the time, and we're just asking to, and we're not just doing it, we're just letting you know that we want to talk to them about political issues. The races are coming up in November, if I'm.
Yeah, and
So-
we discussed that, and it's, if you look at the record, it was thoroughly discussed and understood, and that's
So
why
we're
we
just
came to an
then
agreement.
we're just re-thoroughing it then.
Right.
I think the word is.
And it's not a favor, it's, we thoroughly discussed the First Amendment rights, their ability to talk to their city council member as a citizen, as a union member, during the time of negotiations pursuant to good faith bargaining in chapter 174.
But nothing
and-
in the ground rules affects their First Amendment rights. at all.
No, absolutely not. No, so they're not, they're not, and we had discussions about this, they're not prohibited from, talking to a council member or saying hi or hello or whatever. They just, the subject matter of negotiations and negotiations itself are not things that they can discuss at this point, because the negotiations are open and they're subject to the open meetings. So absolutely, we ground rules allow for First Amendment, that's no issue there. And I apologize if I misunderstood at the beginning, I misunderstood what the ask was.
Well, I can understand because historically, what has happened here in the past, or what is perceived to have happened or whatever, I don't know. I don't know personally because I wasn't here every minute, but I understood that that was part of the reason for the lengthy 2-day ground rules basis. Normally, ground rules take about 15 minutes, but that was a sticking point. So they wanted to make sure that they're not, I guess the word is sucker punching by, oh yeah, we heard Carlos Charlie was talking to Representative Torres over here. Oh, that's against our ground rules, and so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I guess we can come to an agreement on that, as long as those 3 articles are basically brought in because of time constraints on our behalf, so they can be brought into the next meeting.
Okay, Article 16, 15, and the retirement,
30,
which is
30.
30. And tomorrow we need to pin down the meeting for next week.
Yes.
I know for sure that the only day that I'm not available is September 1. I have a mediation in San Antonio.
It's Thursday.
That's my son's birthday, so.
So we're gonna work around that, but we also, I don't wanna set it for Monday if Monday doesn't give Jesus and everybody that I need to crunch the numbers to be able to give it to me so we can have everything ready. I wanna be ready.
Yeah, I just need, like I say, kind of a little bit of expediting instead of
Yeah.
kind of putting off, pushing. But I say, I mean, I understand where we have to go thoroughly through it and make sure everything's, the correct numbers, correct language and everything. But
And I tell you-
we're on a time constraint here. Like I said, we've already pushed back our efforts as much as we can. It's kind of going beyond
I
what
understand.
we've been allowed to do. And this isn't even from the association point, which pertains to our pension and the time frame that they need because of this. Like I say, some of these issues, I understand you're short-staffed and short-handed.
There were other issues such as people having COVID for a very long time and other personal matters that came into play that just are out of our control. So. Okay,
But we can agree to that.
all right. Okay, well, we will come back next week. We'll pin down the day.
2 days or 1 day?
For next week, it depends on, I need to talk to Jesus and the timing. I think that
Because another 2 or
when we
3
sit
days,
down, I
can
want to
knock
make
this
sure,
out.
when we sit down, I want to make sure that we can present all the articles that we need to present. and then encounter proposals if possible. And that way it gives you time to come back and maybe possibly the next week, we could have 2 meetings if we have enough time to be working on simultaneously counter proposals there.
We'd be happy because I won't be here. I'll be at the hearing next week and then I have training.
Why would I be
the
happy?
following- Well, no, there'll be
Also,
somebody else there.
if by next meeting, we can have that extension, so we can.
Oh,
get ready to
yes,
sign
the
it. Just-
extension. We'll sign the
Oh, yeah,
extension
yeah.
for next meeting.
Actually, I know September 9th is right around the corner, and it lands on a Sunday before we know
Yeah,
it.
so we'll do it before then. Okay, I think that's all we have for today, and I appreciate your time and their work and being here, and we look forward to continuing these negotiations and making some progress.
Appreciate your time too.
Thank you.